first item of business is public comment. Oh, I think we got a public comment. Will you come up and introduce yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. In public comment, I just would like to report that I visited the Museum of Natural History the other night, and they've gotten permission to redo the parking lot as a conventional parking, repave the existing parking lot, despite the problem was with the wonderful plans that you accepted from Isabel Green for a quote-unquote green parking lot proved to be too expensive and way out of reach for their budget. So they are in the process of repaving the parking lot, and it was deemed, according to the museum, that it did not need to come before this body because it was just a repaving. And I have no idea how they're handling the wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to assume that it did not have to come before us. Is that correct, Susan?
It did not. It was a like-for-like replacement, and the planner who had given it the administrative approval across the counter made sure that there were no extra parking spaces snuck in, and it was like-for-like repaving. Now, this board approved kind of a demonstration paving project over there a few years back with different types of permeable paving in areas. I don't know how that's coming along. Maybe they don't have the funds to do that.
Yes, that's, I believe, is the problem, is that it was incredibly expensive, and there is some question about the permeability, actually, aspect of it.
Right, and I'm hoping that that goes forward at some time. They were, if I remember correctly, there were several different, maybe 6 or 8 different types of permeable pavers, and they wanted to see how effective and efficient they were.
Right. Thank you. Second item of business is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 3rd. Do I have any comments or?
There was a question brought up for the conscious review number 527, Mr. Kelvin before. They did not say that the original design was totalitarian, utilitarian.
Yes, I think we can change that. That would be under the public comments under item number 5. Page 7.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I've got a couple of staff is ready. Page 4, item 1. Under commission comments, positive comments of design and design direction were provided on the storefront design. I would like to add, if possible, however, details need to consider proportions and aesthetic issues. We did discuss that. Page 6, item 5. Excuse me, page 6, item 4. 1555 Alameda Padre Serra. Under the motion, I think Commissioner Murray had something more to add to that. I remember a discussion. Are you, Commissioner Murray, bringing up? Was it solely the windows, Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I was concerned about the windows. There was something about the windows.
Yeah, but that didn't get into the motion.
I can't remember. Maybe that was just a comment. No, it would have been.
It would have been one unto itself.
Well, I thought you asked the question, why aren't you reusing windows?
Why are they not used? reusing the original windows or something, and I forgot.
And I don't know how much that has to do with the HSR, the report, but it may want to be in there. It's up to you. It's your call, Jake.
I think that's why, I guess I had questions about why couldn't they reuse some of the windows.
Everybody said that.
And of course the architect's answer was he wasn't quite sure. He had to look at the plans and stuff. But I think it'll be okay because we are asking that they bring the photo documentation
Okay.
when they come to the next design review. So I think we'll have a chance to look at the pictures and the actual windows. So
Madam Chair,
okay.
Yes.
it was also, that was the, I hate to say, the totalitarian side of that particular building. It was the utilitarian side of the building where there weren't many of the very character-defining features that represent the residents. So we can take a look at what they're replacing, but and if they have the opportunity to reuse windows, we can always encourage that. But it seemed to me that side of the house was pretty, uncharacteristic of the rest of the building. So it may or may not be an issue, but we
Okay,
can look
then I
into it when
think
it comes
maybe we
back.
don't need to
Really,
even
we can
add it
just
then.
leave it,
But I do
yeah.
remember a lengthy discussion about it.
Yes,
no-
and
so
if
no
I can
changes
remember,
then.
I thought the architect noted that some of these were replacement windows anyway.
Yeah, that end of the house had
That
an
was
addition
part of
in the
the-
70s or 80s, something
Yeah.
like that.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
So maybe it's a non-issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's certainly something that we always encourage was the reuse of existing
Right.
materials, character-defining materials where possible.
Okay,
Right.
moving on, page 7, item number 5. Under the motion, comment 1, I suggest striking the phrase, particularly the southwest elevation on State Street. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So southwest wouldn't be on State Street, in my opinion. And then under the motion, comment number 2, explore,
No,
return.
wait.
Why did you want to strike that? Because they particularly appreciated the changes made to that elevation. So why?
Yeah,
did
we
you-
should, yeah.
Not the southwest would be what, facing State Street?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's southwest.
At that location.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
what they
Okay.
approved.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, very well.
Normally called west, but
Yeah, but it,
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's,
And I thought that we appreciated the simplification of the design for the whole building, not just necessarily that.
It was especially acute on
Okay.
on the State Street
I'm
side.
fine with that. Okay, and then item 2 under the motion, if we could add after the word elevation, facing the parking lot.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think
That's
that's
good.
it.
Okay.
Good.
If that wasn't enough.
All right.
Are there any other comments or revisions or additions to these minutes? If not, all those in favor of approving these minutes as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion
I
carries.
abstain.
Mr. Drury abstains. Next item of business is the consent calendar.
So, Madam Chair, item 1, or item A, 102 West Pedregosa Street was final approval as noted on sheet 1. Item B, 625 Chapala Street was final approval as submitted. Those were both reviewed by Commissioner Suding.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining on item B, 625 Chapala.
Thank you. That motion carries. Next item of business is the announcements and requests by applicants for continuances, etc.
I have no announcements, Madam Chair.
Oh. Does,
Madam Chair, I have
Yes.
an announcement. I'd like to announce the first biannual Glen Hartwood Invitational Fine Art Exhibition at the Museum of Natural History, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, February 19th to the 21st. It'll benefit the museum and the Nature Conservancy. A 3-day sales and art event.
thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I had a 512 to 518 Bath Street archaeological report last week. That was
Yeah, we had asked you to hang on to them for this week, but then it wasn't ready yet again, so if you
Okay,
could please
hang
hang
on
on
to
to
that.
that. I
Okay.
thought I sent an email out, but maybe I didn't.
you didn't.
Nah.
Okay.
Oh,
Well,
Good to have you back, Phil.
I would assume you would hold on to it anyway if you didn't hear further.
all right. Any other? Yes.
Madam Chair, we had a good week at the film festival. One of the really great films that Commissioner Sharp attended, and there were people like David Black, was the Vision of I Am Pei film, and not enough people saw that. So I'm gonna look into some kind of screening for that this summer. I will let the commission know about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Are there any other announcements or items of information? Seeing none, next item of business is subcommittee reports.
Madam Chair,
Ah,
I attended the informational public meeting at Brinkerhoff District at 532 Brinkerhoff Avenue on Wednesday, February 10th at 4 p.m. Quite a few of the neighbors turned out and had lots of questions for the city arborist, as well as some questions for the Parks Department and Park and Rec Commission. The consensus was that the Brinkerhoff community needs to come up with a request for a new designated street tree, and they will be developing a phased removal plan, but they will be discussing those proposals with either Commissioner Adams and or myself. The two trees that were in question were pine trees that are at 532 Brinkerhoff Avenue, but they have not been approved for removal. So they are okay for now. That's it.
thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Designation Subcommittee this morning, and we discussed the forthcoming landmark designations of Brinkerhoff, Jake presented us with a very, very nicely done form that can be used. Do you have that with you, Jake?
Not ready for general consumption.
Okay, okay, but which would help people identify their buildings according to what style they are and so forth, and
Oh.
could be eventually used at the counter to help people. Fermina, what am I missing?
Rosemary Lane.
Oh, Rosemary Lane was the other, the area where the Moody Sisters cottages are, and then eventually the Bungalow Haven, and eventually getting down to West Beach.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to be meeting with a number of residents from Rosemary Lane next Friday. Fermina has graciously volunteered to attend the meeting also, where we're going to be discussing the possibility of creating an historic district along Rosemary Lane.
Great. Thank you. Progress. I'll start with the first item of business, which is 1221 to 1235 State Street. This is a second concept review, and I'm going to be needing historic resource findings if this goes forward. Where did we put that?
How are you?
Uh-oh. I lost that piece of paper. Oh, here it is. Could you introduce yourselves for the record?
I'm Lori Smythe. I'm the agent for the owner.
Thank you.
Ron Esposito with Esposito Enterprises.
Thank you. I'm going to read these notes while you're getting ready to present, and that is that the concept review, our motion was continued indefinitely with the following comments. Present continuous State Street and Victoria Street elevations. Present sections throughout the corridors and the back of the building to show how the colors will relate to each other. Review the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines to see what is acceptable in the landmark district. Restrict and tone down the color palette. If adding ornamentation, the details should be historically appropriate to the El Pueblo Viejo. And the Commission will make individual site visits to look at the as-built installation of entryway tile at 1233 State Street.
I see that.
Hi.
So Ron was at the last meeting and took the notes, and what we've provided now is the continuous elevations of the State and Victoria Street. elevations. We also are providing some examples right out of the El Pueblo Viejo guidelines that show that we are really trying to conform to what it is being asked for the colors and the details of the changes of the building. We also printed out some colors of some other examples on State Street that have obviously been approved and are in existing. And then I also wanted to provide some of the work that Ron's company has done in many projects such as this, which are just trying to bring some life into the upper State Street area around Victoria Court, and has got tons of experience of doing this kind of thing. So this is some of his projects that he's worked on.
Also in the blueprint, it shows the before and after color palette. Some of the comments that were made about some of the intense colors, and then what I did was I relined on the outside of those original colors the softer palette that was in line with the Santa Barbara palettes, paint palettes.
And may I ask, you showed the State Street and Victoria Street elevations, but do we have sections through the corridors in the back of the building?
You do.
Okay.
There was a request that the State Street sides were obviously, the street sides were more important, but to show you some ideas for what's going on in the interior courtyards. And then you have, is there any further pictures?
They're all handed everything out, I believe.
Oh, there we go. Maybe these. Here we
Yeah,
go.
that's the original.
Okay, so just to give an idea, the interior ones, did you bring those big boards? The one that
They're in my car.
maybe you want to...
We have that
that's
right here.
Yeah.
And basically, this is a smaller version. I have the originals in the
So
car.
what
if we need to
we
take a look
originally
at 'em.
handed in was sort of separate of each building, but then what has been handed to you today is a continuous look. But here's some various indications of what's going to be happening on the interior of the courtyards. And then he also, on the interiors, sort of showed you on this plan the colorations that are going to be going on in the interiors.
And an artist rendering of a cut through.
Do you feel you've done your presentation? Okay, I'm going to ask for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, let's go to questions from the commission. Mr. Adams?
Yeah, so primarily this is, you're proposing paint colors. This
Yes.
is a painting project.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Commissioner Peugeot.
On the base on this part right here, 1229 and etc. Is that as shown? Yeah, there we go.
Can you point over to here? please?
Yeah,
Where the camera's
yeah,
going?
Right here.
this right here. This is just the paint.
That's just a paint, and I've done it many times. So it'll be a faux granite, and then sealed with a urethane.
Okay, and the same on the column.
The same. Yeah, I was trying to bring some continuity across.
And using more like that looks more like, is that the same thing? Over there
No,
on the
this
arch?
will be faux Santa Barbara sandstone.
Sandstone.
I didn't know if you had
Yeah,
any
this
pictures.
whole entire, it's hard to see, but this whole, this was a $2 billion project. I was in charge of the art direction for the whole exterior, and this is all faux. The whole exterior of this building is all faux. Even the stones were sculpted by my company, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Question. At 1221 State Street, is this frieze up here that is painted on?
That's,
correct?
yes,
It's
trompe
not
l'oeil.
existing.
Trompe l'oeil.
Trompe l'oeil. Got it.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question, but it's
Yeah.
more to the subcommittee that worked on the guidelines of the Santa Barbara guidelines, the EPP guidelines, and maybe you're probably more aware of this than I am, being that you worked on them. So what is the direction regarding color, paint color? Because, and the reason I'm asking is because it's a little bit unusual. It's the first time that we see this type of a thing. So I'd like to make sure that we comply with our guidelines. So, or maybe staff can help us.
Madam Chair, just happen to have a copy of the guidelines
Yes,
here.
good.
Basically, for colors, it says the purpose of the color palette of a building shall be appropriate, or the proposed color palette for a building shall be appropriate to the style and age of the building. Although white is preferred, consider using colors or materials similar or contemporary to those adjacent development. If the building is a landmark or a structure of merit, the owner should attempt to obtain the original colors through a paint scrapings or some sort of analysis. So there is a little bit of leeway there. I do remember Billavoy's famous words were always, you can paint it any color you want as long as it's white.
Yes.
I have a question about the Upper Holly building. Is that a structure of merit? I know it's certainly on our list of historic structures, and I'm sure it's on the state inventory.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it is in the project description.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's the structure with the address of 1227 to 1233 is the designated structure of merit Upper Holly building.
Okay. Well, it's certainly eligible, at least the facade for a landmark. Has there been any attempt to discover what the original paint color?
No.
Are there any further questions from the Commission? Shall we go to comments then?
Madam Chair? I'm struggling with this. I like color. I think it's nice to have some variation. I'm struggling, I guess, with the faux stone and the trompe l'oeil, just because that in Santa Barbara we try to use traditional materials and not try to fool the eye, especially within the El Pueblo Viejo district. I'll let other commissioners comment.
Thank
So I'm
you.
struggling with this.
Okay. No, this is not a dialogue. Okay. Further comments from?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm having the same problems. This is certainly more than half of this block. And, for example, the building on the corner in green would be very unusual. A lot of the time when stronger colors are used, it's with the smaller buildings. And I find this to be too much. And I certainly agree with Phil on the faux, this and that, and the trompe l'oeil. Okay?
Okay.
But I would also feel that if any change is going to be made to the Upper Holly building, which is 1229 to 1233, that there should be some attempt made to find out what the original color of that building was.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have a question, I'm sorry. 1221 State, you have, I'm assuming that the color is going to be all the way across.
Yes.
The same, that color is proposed. Well, then I'll make a comment.
Yes.
I think this looks pretty good. I like the idea of this palette, and the values don't change very much in terms of across the board. I'm talking about color values, not moral. And the sunlight is never going to hit this building, not even in the middle of summer, hit these buildings directly, but it's going to give I think a really nice warm feel to that part of State Street. I'm not a fan of particularly white buildings. I'd like to see some color, especially in that part of State Street. So I'm in favor of this. I like this. I will agree with Commissioner Suding. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the false granite. False granite. I'm not so. I don't have much trouble with the trompe l'oeil of the sandstone blocks on the corner of the Starbucks building, but the base of the granite from 1229 to 1233, I do have a little trouble with. The rest of it, I like the color palette very much.
Thank you.
I want to make a comment. I feel like the paint artist does beautiful work, but when I look at that, it doesn't feel like Santa Barbara. It doesn't feel like EPB to me. My comment would be, I find the colors too contrasting. It does nothing to unify these buildings.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I agree with Mr. Suding's comment regarding the stone and the trompe-l'oeil and so forth. And we normally do require applicants to go down and find the original paint color for typically the Upper Hawley building, for instance, which is clearly one building. And that should be done here, in my estimation. And I personally feel the colors are a little strong for El Pueblo Viejo.
Thank you. Ms. Murray?
Yeah, I just want to add that, you brought some of these other colors here, which are definitely in the EPV. But what is different is, for instance, like the train station, that is, of course, a landmark, and that is its original color. And so many times they wanted to paint it differently. They had to go into archaeology to find that building. So normally, and that's, I think the guideline says is the age and the style. So the age of the building, obviously this one would be the historic one, should remain pretty much close to its original, as well as the decorative part. You definitely do not want to put those on. Maybe some of the trim, you'd find some of these colors, the trims were stronger, and that would be the way to, dress up that. But I mean, for instance, like if you look at this building, and I don't know.
That's the Starbucks.
That's the Starbucks. Then you're looking at the age and the age of it and the style, and then this building is particularly across from the Science Monitor building, the Christian Science Monitor, which is a structure of merit building. And so this color, I think, would kind of give another nice color to it's an impact of color to the other historic structures. And then across the street with the Granada Theater. So what I'm saying is the colors are, it's hard to say no, because obviously if you look at the EPV, you'll find all these variations of colors. But I'm looking at more of the setting and the sense of that whole block in relationship to all these other sort of historic markers. And probably more with a lighter colors and maybe strong colors more on the trim would be the way to go.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there's no assurance that the buildings that do have color on State Street ever received approval. Sometimes things get painted on weekends and stuff, and they've been there long enough that they've been accepted, but some of the buildings that have color may not have been approved at that color if they'd come in to this commission.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
I agree with the comments made. I think the applicant is very talented, and obviously they have worked a lot on this project. But I think that some of the faults, the fog treatment makes this not be like our historic district. It's excessive. I have no problem with some use of color, but this is too much. Too much, because every single building, no building is white anymore. Maybe I agree with the comment by Ms. Boucher that usually the smaller pieces get the brighter color. It's kind of part of the typical design strategy, but here it just seems to be too much.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I should have asked for comments regarding the as-built installation of the entryway tile. Though when I went, there was nothing there.
There's nothing there.
Yeah, this some concrete with a color. It is a little bit of a strong color.
Yes.
It's somewhat, in my view, somewhat acceptable. I think it will mellow out as the time goes by. It's kind of a strong. It's like a gray color.
It's
right?
finished, yeah. They removed what was there.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at the substrate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess the question to the applicant is, what's the intention?
I think that if it's sandblasted, the vision is great.
Yeah.
Is the intention to leave that as it is, or?
There's no tenant in that building, that space.
Okay, so I think we'll leave that out of.
It's a neutral, right?
I thought you were talking about this.
In fact, I don't know about that. I don't know if that was ever reviewed and approved either.
So you're talking about this? Right. Yes. Okay. I know nothing about that.
Okay.
If you look at that next picture there, Lori, you had it was I think the third one down. That right there. No,
This
right
one?
there. That's the tile that was installed without a permit, the metallic tile. And what they did was they tore it out then, and now what you see on top is what's left behind.
It's just concrete.
Okay. Yes. Mr. Schellenberger.
Well, I just wanted to comment that I hope the applicant doesn't take away from this that white is the only solution. I don't think that's the feeling here at all. And the comment of, I don't care what color it is as long as it's white, that's excessive to say the least. So I just wanted to reiterate the point of what I'm hearing is that some color is acceptable.
Okay, I'm going to summarize the comments, and then I'll look for a motion. And those comments are, we wish to have you take a color sample of the historic Hawley building in order to figure out what the original color was. That the majority of the commission feels in particular that the faux stone treatment, and a smaller majority feel that the trompe-l'oeil treatment is inappropriate to these buildings within the context of its neighborhood, the building, and adjacent buildings. And that we'd like to see you come back with an altered palette. Perhaps whatever this color is going to determine what that palette may be. We are not advocating for completely white buildings. We are saying that a color palette is acceptable. A color palette is acceptable. But you might take a cue from this building for all I know.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to continue this project 2 weeks.
Second.
Well, is the applicant ready?
I didn't hear that motion. Sorry.
Continued for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I can't ask any questions.
I have a couple.
You can ask a question
Oh,
about
we-
clarification of our motion.
Okay.
But we don't want a dialogue of rebuttal.
Right.
No, yeah, I don't want a
right,
rebuttal. I just want a
exactly.
clarification of a couple of things. Is that appropriate? Okay. Just so when we come back, because we want to take advantage of prior to summer and try and get this complete, I want to come back with you with what it is you're asking for. So clarification is that the green here is unacceptable. I just don't want to come back with something else and have
Right.
you continue it in another 2 weeks. So I'd love really very much clarification of what you would accept and what you wouldn't accept,
Us
so we
too.
don't do this again.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So unacceptable, the green on the corner, is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Drury has already expressed that the
He
whole
likes
color
it,
palette
yeah.
is acceptable.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Lloyd, if I may just interrupt. It's hard for us to say what's acceptable and unacceptable because we don't know what the historic color of this building was.
Right.
And this building, I think,
Right.
sets the tone for the other buildings.
Okay.
Right.
However, I think the majority of the board thinks that color number G189 is probably not acceptable.
Okay.
So,
And in looking at all the other colors, I know this is not acceptable either, the granite,
Right.
which I understand. Is there a problem with any of the other colors on the bottom of the color board?
so you need to indicate for the division which numbers you're eliminating.
Eliminating 5, 6?
And G189.
Oh, sorry, PL 180 and eliminating G 189. Are there any other color palette?
Uh, Well, are you going to clarify her question, or?
I was just going to say that for me, 179 is a little much.
Then
Okay.
I would agree with Commissioner Boucher.
Okay, so PL 179 is also eliminated, as is
Okay.
PL 180 and G 189.
Okay. And then another clarification question I have, because I know your concern is really with the street side elevations, is are we allowed to go a little stronger in the interior of the courtyards that we have sort of proposed here with...
Where is that?
Madam Chair, there's 2 PL 180s.
There's 180, yes, that's right.
There's one with the
I understand it's the granite.
Yeah, but it is the fauxstone stone.
It's a
PL
base.
180.
It's a base color for the trompe-l'oeil.
No,
Yes.
P as in Paul.
PL 180, the faux stone should be eliminated.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Let's just clarify something color-wise. All these colors are of a certain saturation. If they're lifted in saturation, in other words, lifted with white, and that just simply means making them a little less strenuous, that might help with the acceptability of every color on this palette. As they sit, they're pretty saturated.
And if I can clarify, as I understand it, we are concerned not only with the State Street elevation, but every exterior elevation that sees the air. That includes that interior elevations are just as important to us as the State Street.
But
And
as
the
far
rear.
as, because our original direction from the city was that we would have a little bit more, just as Paseo Nuevo, if you go through Paseo Nuevo, you know, they've used a little stronger colors on the interior of the courtyards than they have on the street side. We're wondering if we also have that ability to have a little bit more freedom with the colors on the interior, sticking with this palette. But as Paseo Nuevo also shows, is they are using much stronger colors on the interior of the courtyard than. And what we're really trying to do here is bring business back up to the upper State Street and trying to get some new vitality here. So, you know, trying to honor this in a really, you know, sophisticated way, but trying to add a little bit of color to bring a little bit more interest. So, yes, we could go a little stronger in the courtyard, or we should stick with the more muted palette throughout the whole project.
And are we okay with
Yeah.
what we've done so far?
Like this is sort of an interior courtyard picture.
I, for one, would be okay with a little stronger color within the courtyard, but that's one commissioner.
Madam Chair?
Yes. All
Madam
those
Chair?
who would be amenable to having slightly stronger palette in the interior, please raise your hands. You got your answer?
I have one clarification question.
You can't raise your hands, though, in the vote.
Oh, sorry. I'm used to sitting on that side for Santa Clarita.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I didn't put my hand up because I'm not just exactly sure what that means.
Well, they propose we review, so
That's true.
but we can only give you the direction,
Yeah.
the clarification that you
But
asked
for
for.
example, the back portion of the Holly building is different from a lot of the rest of it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think once they get used, that they understand that.
Madam Chair?
Well, I think he had a question, and then I'll
I did.
get back to you.
When we met last time, the palette that I had proposed was okay for, I thought was okay for the interior of the courtyard, and we needed to show a cross section, so I did a rendering with the exact colors. And then, well, we only have the two facades, and I was wondering if these two facades and this palette is okay for the courtyard so far. I mean, there's many more, but I'd like to know where to go from here.
It's really important, and you understand this as much as we do, that it look like the same project, the same building, and that will carry you quite a ways into how you treat as you go around or behind a building and so forth. So it doesn't look like a different building altogether.
Right.
So I think we're also referring again to the Hawley building.
And I think once you get that main building to be what it needs to be, then I think
Madam Chair?
Is there an official way to get do we do the scrapings, or do we have to hire somebody to do that?
Oh, okay.
And then we take a picture of it and,
You can do that.
okay, okay,
Many paint stores have a color analyzer.
okay,
just go
Okay.
scraping.
okay. And then my last question, just because the next time we come in here, we are ready to, start prepping the buildings and that sort of thing, and I want to get as much information in front of you to get finalized as possible. My understanding from the last project is we did not need to do every single interior courtyard elevation because it's a costly process to have them do that. But are you acceptable with showing on this sort of thing the colors that we're planning to use on each face so that you can see how the colors butt up against each other? Or are you requesting an elevation of every single elevation in the project?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the applicant is right. It is a very convoluted, it's complex
Subjective.
maze of arcades and such, and it would be onerous for the applicant to do that. I personally would accept something like that. As many photos as you can take would help, but you don't need to render it in the color that you're proposing,
Okay.
as long as we have that.
Okay, so we can show you the photo and say, here's the color. Okay.
We can use our imagination.
Okay.
And
Okay, good.
But the outside is nice done.
what's very confusing sometimes to someone who doesn't do the hands-on work that we do is that if you look at the palette that's here before the faux goes on top of it, it's very soft and very subdued. And I would really appreciate it if you did take a look at that. I have no problem changing the current palette. I have no problem adjusting what we need to adjust or anything, but just so you know that when you start off with a palette, a base color palette, these colors are extremely subdued, and I can go with a lot less opacity and chromatic value to the actual facade than what's here, if that makes sense.
So what I guess he's asking is, are these base colors acceptable to start with?
Except for
From the
the
beginning.
historical building, which we can
Which
get
will-
a scraping
So
from.
Get a
We're
scraping.
kind of waiting
That's the
for
linchpin
that.
of the whole
Yeah,
project.
I mean, you're asking questions based on
Okay.
a factor that we just don't know and you don't know.
Okay.
So,
But they're nice colors.
Like Walt Disney said, color is the most subjective thing he's ever had to deal with.
yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to throw a cautionary note in. The Paseo Nuevo was built at the end of the very short-lived postmodern period, and therefore the color scheme inside of Paseo Nuevo should not be used as an example for some of these older paseos. I
Right.
would just like to caution you on that.
Thank you. So do you feel clear to move forward?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So 2 weeks is still okay? All right.
Small point is sometimes what to say in the way we'll do or whatever is they'll show gold color in a pot with plans or something like that. So there's entirely, though you may not want to bring that through this process, there is that ability to have gold through set furniture. It's not necessarily furniture, but more like
Okay.
Thank you.
So my motion would be to continue 2 weeks. Is that good?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second.
Abstained? Thank you for the second. That motion carries.
How can I help with this situation? I don't
I
know.
think you should
think
propose
that's
what
your-
you're going to
that's your
use
copy.
and then have us approve it, or how do you want to do that,
It's
Susan?
all that we're standing.
If you can either propose that it remain like that, and they would say yes or no, or you can propose another treatment.
Material.
Maybe the commissioners, Madam Chair,
Yes.
would you like to ask them if they would support just leaving it like that?
We would need to reopen.
You would need to reopen the
I
items.
think so.
The applicant does need to know that.
When I look at that, which makes me a little nervous, is it looks like it's
Flush.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about how.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Us too.
It might be a good time to address that when we get a tenant. Going in there and the tenant can come in with an improvement for you.
Yes. Well, why don't we then wait for a tenant? We were off the hook for a while. Thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Oh,
next item of business is 220 East Ortega Street.
Other side. We should start with the plans, right? Not the. Excuse me. Start with the plans. Start with the plans. You're welcome. Yeah. To make me nervous. Thank you for the opportunity. Plans? Yes. Plus white, yes. Thank you. Yep, that's just a addition. Okay. While she's handing those out, good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is James Winslow. I'm a project engineer in the Public Works Department here at the city. Today we have the Ortega Groundwater Treatment Plant project, which is basically across the street. Part of our team, we have David Black for David Black Landscape Architects with us, and Joe Wilcox of KBZ Architects. Go ahead. We also have Susan Thompson, the Cater Water Treatment Plant Superintendent, and Ryan Anderson, Carollo Engineers, with us if there's any of those questions. In addition, Heather Baker has been helping us get through the process with this up in city planning, and we'll get to the reason why in a minute. The project in front of us is, again, Ortega Groundwater Treatment Plant. It's located, as you can see here, at 220 East Ortega Street. It's basically right across the street on the corner of Garden and Ortega. And I think we're going to come to the photographs in a little bit later time, if that's okay.
Okay.
Move these out of the way. And so looking at the site is one whole parcel here on the corner. The Ortega Groundwater Treatment Plant is the portion in the rear of the facility. This part up here is the Community Arts Workshop, which you guys have looked at a couple years ago. And we know we have approved plans for that, but this is what Solstice is, and I know that there are some approved plans by that. However, it's kind of on hold with pending council and some soil conditions and moving forward with that. The reason why we're here is because we need to move forward with the Ortega Groundwater Treatment Plant. It's a very important water resource for this for the city. It was built in 1975, and 4 city wells are plumbed to that location to treat groundwater, and that allows us to supplement our surface water supplies from Cachuma and Gibraltar. It also helps us to meet emergency demands and peak flows and emergency conditions such as Mission Tunnel or Tecolote Tunnel collapsing. So there's some importances for that. It operated significantly during the drought from 1989 to 1993. At that point, we took it offline so we could allow the groundwater levels to recharge in the area and also to treat we have some water quality issues. So Water Resources hired Carollo engineers and Water Quality Treatment Solutions to look at our groundwater quality and come up with a treatment solution. We spent over 5 years looking at that, and we've come up with a design, a treatment solution that will work, and then so we had to fit it into the space of this site. The project, based on that design, we have some state revolving fund loan funding that has been approved, and it's the amount of $9.92 million. Initially, that was we're trying to partner with Community Arts Workshop and Solstice to move together, forward together with that. However, the state came back and said instead of September 2010 completed plans and specs, we need to have them by June. So we have an escalated timeline here to get this project designed and done so that we can meet the loan requirements and get the funding. And that funding keeps our water rates low. It's a really real low interest rate loan. So if we look at the project, And so that kind of addresses the importance of this project. Moving into what we're looking at doing, in the back of the site, we're removing 3 tanks. This tank here is a reservoir, existing reservoir, that's about 24 feet tall. And then there's an additional 3 feet of railing on there. So the total observable height of that is about 27 feet. Okay. In the center, I'm sorry. So we're moving these 3 tanks, associated equipment, and some walls and other. We're not touching, we're actually preserving the historic 1926 survey building. And you can see we already have a space existing for some future expansion, and that will be one of the projects that we're going on. If we look at what we're proposing to put in, there we go, now we're on the screen, thank you. If we're looking at what we're proposing to put in, again, here's one of our tanks. It's just replacing the one that's there now. This one's 25 feet tall with no railings, 100,000 gallons. We're adding an additional tank here of 100,000 gallons, and those will be to hold finished water and wastewater. A 7-foot tank here for chemical storage, and that's basically rock salt that's converted into a weak solution. And then you see we're adding a horizontal tank here in that space that was empty. In addition to the new equipment, we'll have some electrical loads. So we have a new under 300 square foot building. Addition, correct. Thank you. We realize that the space is really constrained here. This isn't an ideal facility, particularly with the tanks in the district, El Pueblo Viejo, and so we want to work with you guys and the upgrades that we have proposed to make it look better and more aesthetic and try to fit in if we can as much as possible. Unfortunately, this is the site that it's been historically. These were the wells were and water springs a long time ago. So. And everything is plumbed to this location. At this point, we know it's not ideal. We want to make it fit in, and I'd like to turn it over to David Black to talk about some of the ways that we can make it a little more aesthetic.
Thank you, James. I'm going to show a few more photographs, which will, I think, help orient you and give you a sense of what exists on the site today. Obviously, our objective, my goal, is to as best we can, mitigate the visual impact of the proposed facilities. So, that being said, we have a plan that sort of illustrates what we're proposing, but I'll just kind of give you an overview of it. Obviously, this is the survey building on Ortega Street, north side of it, and you can see there's some existing podocarpus along here and here on Ortega. There's some prunus trees on the west side, some eugenia trees on the left, which goes somewhat to help screen the existing facilities. Of course, this would be on the east side. These are the prunus. Now, I show you this photograph because what we'll be doing then is, among the things we'll be doing is, these trees will have to be removed because this particular wall will be removed, taken down, and moved forward, and so it ends up, this is where it would be located here. It's going to be moved forward. It'll come off the corner of the building. This gate would be replaced. At this location, ends up being it'll be a rolling gate in this direction here, and give you some sense. What am I doing upside down? Sorry. Here we are building Ortega here. So that wall would be moved forward, coming off the corner of the building, and then this existing steel gate would be replaced by a rolling steel gate. And I've shown sort of a concept of what that gate might look like. I try to make it a little bit more traditional, but not too ornamental. It's essentially pickets with some spear point tops and some cutout rosettes at the bottom. I'm anticipating that the back would have galvanized sheeting, and then the whole thing would be painted out black, so you'd still at least see the detail, but at the same time you wouldn't be able to see through the gate, and so that would contribute to our ability to screen the facilities behind it. This is the property line along the eastern boundary here, and this wall, as it exists today, would be removed, and a new masonry, 6-foot masonry wall would be built, plaster finish and color to match the existing building, and that would extend all the way down here. And I should point out there's a rolling gate here. and then for functional reasons, access for loading and unloading of materials to the back of this building, there'd be a matching gate at this location, and it would be rolling as well. So here's another shot of it. So this wall would be replaced. This is a view of the parking area on the west side. These trees would remain, but because we know that chain link is, prohibited in the district, all this chain link would be removed, and we would rebuild this fence in kind. It'd be just rebuild the wood fence at this location. The two parking areas, as they're shown here, they're currently asphalt, and they would be replaced with sort of a gray cobbled permeable paver. Now just more shots of the east side. Okay, so then our primary opportunity, if you will, to provide some screening to the site, at least from Ortega Street, and somewhat from between the existing buildings on the east, is a series of upright canopy trees. We're suggesting the Stenocarpus firewheel trees. We're proposing little cutouts in the existing asphalt, and then we'd have to sort of tie this together with the existing parking. And so we think that would go a long ways toward, creating a sort of an upright mass along this location to mitigate the impact of the tanks over here. In addition, because we're having to remove the two Eugenia trees, we'd be proposing another canopy tree here to help facilitate views from Ortega, and we're proposing an Australian willow, the Gajira. And then these two prunusses would remain, and then we would rework the understory of shrubbery, primarily succulents, aloes, agaves, senecio, and then a ground cover of decomposed granite, and same thing out here in the parkway. Then there would be those of you who would ask, well, what can we do to screen on this side? And I would just point out that the adjacent land use is Santa Barbara Towing, and so this area to the west of the property is pretty much filled up with vehicles. Not really a whole lot of opportunity, and even on the inside of our property, this is pretty much what it looks like. There's the wood fence on the property line. There's sort of a sloped wall, and then it drops down, and pretty much the entire site is paved. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity to do screening from that side, although I must say that there's not much in the way of not much of a public view from that side. So, and I have pictures of some of the plant material, but that's sort of an overview of what we're proposing to do. Now, obviously, there's going to be some additional architectural work in this location, which doesn't show up on my plan, but Joe's going to address that in addition to the existing building.
Yeah, we'll let Joe do the architecture, and then we have a photo simulation.
Yes.
So we'll trade with you. Yep.
There should be a floor plan in the set that we submitted. As James mentioned, we're only adding just a little bit less than 300 square feet on what we call the project north side of the building. And currently, I have a photograph here I'd like to use as well. There are these kind of unusual roof monitors hiding some equipment, and some of the roof monitors actually come down the face of this existing building. In our addition, coming to the north here, we'll add a ridge that matches the existing ridge. We'll be able to clean up this roof monitor, because now it kind of comes down as a chimney, but then it dives back into the wall before it hits the ground. It's just kind of awkward. And then we'll match the same fascia line, and we'll just extend this roof out and extend these roofs out that way. And this is the view you see from Ortega Street. We do have a photo sim that shows the building addition, and we do have the photo sim that shows the changes in the building. Now, as James said, this has been sort of on the super fast track, and since we've done these drawings, I've got some ideas that I've reviewed with the city and they wanted me to mention. Currently, the elevations, this is the elevation that you'd see from Ortega Street, and this would be the addition that comes out towards us about 13 feet. And right now the building has these pilaster haunches that structurally really don't do anything, and it also has this dark band of CMU exposed CMU wall that really doesn't do much. And I've talked to James in the city and said, I think we ought to get rid of the haunches and the pilasters and just plaster up underneath the roof. So I think when we come back at the next level, I'd like to propose that, maybe get your opinions on that, but I'd like it to make make it more traditional. I don't know how it got to this point, but that's what it is. And the doors that we're adding onto the building will match the existing cedar, vertical cedar doors there as well. There is a few light fixtures around that we will clean up for the next submittal as well. And if there aren't any questions, I'll go to the photo sim. Okay. The first slide was the site plan. Ooh. Pretty nice, huh? That's the Winter Olympics. Okay, so obviously this is Garden Street over here. This is the view that you're going to see through the driveway off of Garden Street, and then this is the view that you're going to see off of Ortega. We call it Ortega Lower, and this is Ortega Top. Right now, as you saw in the plans, this is that slot that we're going to fill with a horizontal tank. This is the tank that's going to go away with a new tank to replace it. Those are those roof monitors that I mentioned that I thought were kind of awkward on the north elevation. That tank goes away and that tank goes away. So let's go to the next slide. Thanks, James. Okay, this is the existing view, and as was mentioned earlier, the existing tank is a 24-foot high tank with about a 3-foot high railing. This is the building that right now it kind of chops off right there. You might want to hit the lights because it's a lot lighter in my photos than it is here. I've actually printed out all the photos. So the first photo sim shows the two tanks in a cream color, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. We've also have brought on the Moraga green to kind of get your opinion as to what you might like to see in the tanks. There's the Moraga green.
Malaga.
Malaga, thank you. I like Moraga. It's a nice area.
I do too, actually.
Can we go back one, please?
Yeah.
I think what happens is you tend to not look. Let's go back another one. Right there. You tend to not, because of the tanks, you tend to not see that we're going to be taking this portion of the building and go to the next slide. Basically, it comes out to there, and there's a new wall that David had mentioned will be coming into this area. Those are the horizontal tanks. Okay, next slide. This is the green. This is the Ortega view. Again, this is the fence that we'll be replacing. This is the.
Stop using the laser because it doesn't show up on the television, and let James do the mouse.
Oh, okay. James, do the mouse.
I can follow it. Yeah.
All right.
That way you talk where you want.
Well, I'll just talk. There's the tank with the rails. Again, and again, this is the horizontal tank that's going to be going away, and then this is the building as is. And if we go to the next slide, the dual tanks without the rails, the building coming out towards the north, the new wall. And in this slide, this shows the existing, or this view shows the existing tree. The next one will show the tree that David's proposing. Instant presto, taller tree. Next slide. And there it is in the green. And then this is actually a shot right through the hole between the two large trees. We wanted to show that. And then this is, again, the existing tank with the pipes and the rails. We've actually shown exactly where Corolla wants to put the pipes and so on. And then again, it's in green. And we just need a bigger motorhome and we'll be fine.
On in, maybe.
On in. I think that's the last slide.
That's the last slide.
Thank you.
First, what that photo sim doesn't show is the trees that we're proposing down the eastern boundary too.
Right.
The fire wheel. The fire wheel, yes.
Yeah, if we can just site plan. Back up to the site plan here real quick. We do have, Heather wanted me to mention, backing up to the site plan here, we do have a transformer in this location. It's still being currently spec'd. Once we get the final electrical loading, SCE will spec us a transformer, but we're hoping that the size is going to be 5 by 5 by 7 feet high. So 7 will be hopefully the maximum height on that, and so the fence is 6 feet. So there is a little bit, about a foot that would stick over. But we do have a curved, that David showed, the curved fence, so which is 7 feet in the middle. So. No. I have a photo if you want, but I don't have a typical cut sheet. And so here's the transformer up at Cater. This is the one that's behind the fence, and you see a gentleman standing next to it. It's 81 inches high, so it's less than 7 feet, but still, that's sort of typical photo.
I'd like to also mention that Ryan Anderson is here from Corollo as well. If any technical questions come up, I don't know if you mentioned that or not.
I did, yeah.
You did? Oh, I missed it. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for public comment. I believe we have one speaker.
Here.
Thank you. Kellum DeForest. As Pearl Chase insisted for the Southern Pacific Roundhouse years ago, that it be made to look like a bullfight arena, could not the tanks have a castle-like tower look? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for questions from the commission.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can that concrete flatwork that is on bordering between the towing yard and the project site, can that not be removed?
We could remove it. What would you propose where would that go to?
I'm asking a question. I'm just giving you a hard time.
That's fine.
It's called trees.
I'll make my comment when we get to the comment part. Mr. Black, what type of permeable paver are you using? Have you gone there yet?
Well, made by Angelus Block Company. They've got several different.
You'll bring a sample?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Great.
I have a question about what the back of the survey building looks like. Is it significant in any way architecturally? And then the next part of that question would be the wall would be coming from the building and not covering the back of the existing building?
I think it would come off the corner of the building,
off the corner.
much as it does on the opposite side.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
Just answer the
Copeland.
question about the survey building. The building is a very simple utilitarian building. The back elevation was never meant to be seen by the public. And this has for many years been this type of activity going on behind it. So I would say that that's not anything we need to be concerned with. They are doing a good job of protecting the front. It is a real cute building. They're doing a good job of protecting the front of it and dressing it up. So that would be, I don't think that there would be any significance to the rear elevation.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Sharp.
we all know you don't want handrails on the top of the tower, the tanks. You know for a fact that that will not be required as it gets down through plan check and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you looked at the existing tank now, it does have a handrail around the entire perimeter of the top of the tank. The new tank, when we didn't have that on there, the railing, the ladder comes up and it's about 36 inches. There will need to be a small railing around the manhole. We didn't get the cut sheet in time to include that in here. But it's my understanding that there is a small railing that will be around just that top of where the ladder comes up. But it will not need to go around the entire perimeter, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Yes, Matt?
What's the mature height of the Australian willow generally? What can we expect?
Well,
from
it's
that?
listed at 30 to 40 feet, actually.
Okay. Then the other question is on the existing stucco wall that is proposed. This wall here with the firewall trees as proposed. Was there any reason you couldn't include vines on that? Is there any consideration there as far as the equipment or anything? Any strong consideration against that?
To answer your question, we certainly could do that. I know that because this is kind of a working industrial facility, they would like to sort of minimize the opportunities. One, their biggest objection is leaf litter. And primarily, not that you wouldn't get some from the Stenocarpus, but I think it goes back to maintenance. But if it was something that the board or the commission saw fit to have, then we would consider that certainly.
Okay. Then one more question: if this facility is constructed, does it benefit at all any of the issues that are occurring over at the recycling center in terms of contaminated soil?
Your question is, does
or
it
it's
benefit any of
unrelated?
the contaminated soil over there?
Yeah.
It does not. It's outside that. The contamination is more on the recycling center side portion of the
I
parcel.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
there wouldn't be a benefit. There is some concern as to how the community arts workshop, if it were to move forward, where that stands. We're waiting on environmental stuff for that.
Sure.
But there is a conflict somewhat with the entranceway, so we do know that. But
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
I guess you went so fast I didn't quite catch it. But
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
This is the current tank there now, right?
Correct. That's the current
And then
tank.
there's going to be one next to it.
And actually, in that view, the new
Behind.
tank will be behind. it.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, so this railing will be gone, and then the height of the tank is the same height as the concrete part. Or
Yeah,
is
the tank that we're looking at now is about 24 feet.
Mhm.
The new tank will be 25. So it's
25,
about
so
a foot.
without
and there will be-
without the railing.
Without the railing. There will be a railing around the manhole right where the ladder comes up on the inside portion of it. It's, if I can speak in here, the railing will be, the ladders will be right here on this in the photo scene.
I see.
So there will be a railing around the manhole in this area.
Okay, but you won't see
but
this
you-
apparatus here now. But you will see another tank behind it. Yeah. Okay.
From a different angle,
From
you'll
a
see another
different
tank.
angle.
Correct.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yes, Schaumburg.
Back to the pavers at the east end of the site, I don't see a curb cut there. So I'm not sure why it needs to be paved. It doesn't look like vehicles could even get to that point.
No, it's currently 2 spaces there, and they do park there.
Are they jumping the curb, or how are they?
I would assume there is a curb cut there, even if it might not be shown there. But
okay.
I actually, here we are, proof positive.
We might as well give them this.
Yeah, that's the photo sim for you, just to look at. Hard copy.
I have a question, Madam Chair. Is that line with the fence, is that your property line? The fence, that one right there.
On which side? The portion with the tow yard?
On your side, yeah. Yes, the tow yard.
that is
East or west?
Our property line, if I remember
West.
correctly, goes right down on the top of that fence.
Yeah, on the west side and the
Yeah.
south, yeah.
Yep.
And right now that is paved and is used by the tow yard or
No, it's just paved. The tow yard fence is on the property line. So, and then it drops down from the tow yard another 6 feet
And-
to
and-
the slope, and then down to the ground.
Right.
Bottom of the yard. Yeah, I think David had a good
Yeah.
photo showing that. If you want to put that in the middle there, exactly.
Yeah.
7 also shows it.
Okay, and just, so I understand.
Sure.
Why is it that you don't want to put any landscaping there?
Since it's a water facility, there's a need to get equipment in and around there. Any low landscaping, Dave, maybe you can address this a little bit better, is hidden behind the fence of the tow yard since there's such a drop off. Anything bigger will drop leaf into the area that's going to be right there. And on sheet, this one here, what is this, 4? You can see the new 100,000 gallon tanks come right up to the edge of that. So there's not a lot of space to move equipment in and around and piping and everything else, and also take care of landscaping.
Yeah.
So you can see the 2 wash tanks. If we look right here, these 2 wash tanks, the finished water tank, 100,000 gallon, and the wash tank are right up along the edge of the bottom.
Just as a question, I was just thinking more in terms of a couple of trees, like industrial type trees, like melaleucas, eucalypti, something like that, would not take a lot of care. Why wouldn't, is there a specific reason why they cannot possibly be there?
Well, I guess I would ask the question, to what purpose? I mean, obviously, if you wanted to use them as a mitigation for the visual impact of those 2 tanks, you'd pretty much have to put them between the tanks and the property line. But, short of demoing that sloped wall and putting some kind of planter, and even that planter wouldn't be very large to accommodate the kind of tree you're talking about, I suspect. So it's somewhat problematic, I would guess.
I think it's inconsistent with maintenance of a facility of that type.
Are there any further questions? Yes?
To Mr. DeForest's question, has there been any thought to expressing these water tanks as water tanks? Do you get my question?
I don't. Maybe can you clarify, please?
Well, maybe sheathe them in wood, maybe put a china hat on them.
So more of a traditional water tank that you'd see on top of a roof of a building.
Yeah.
No, we have not given any thought to that. These are basically what was there. We were trying to replace similar so that the height was about the same based on the constraints of the technology and treatment methods.
And we're trying to make it better.
And I agree. And we definitely want to. That's exactly why we're here.
Okay. Great.
And they're consistent with other reservoirs that we have in the city. So that's, I think, a reason for that.
Where's that faux artist?
I just made it that we do things traditionally.
15 love.
Any case.
We did hear that comment earlier. Yes.
Yeah.
Any color you want.
Murals in Lompoc. Yeah.
Big hunk of granite. Big hunk of
Baker,
granite.
did you wish to say anything? No? Okay. Let's go to comments then. Oh, yes. Oh.
The color of the tanks.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, maybe not.
I assume that they're sort of a cream color as they begin. I was wondering if they could be made a more, like June fog color or something that would, I'm serious.
Well, no, they're proposing Malaga green, so they are open to
Which I
painting
think,
another color.
it makes them look, the green makes them look, okay. So I was wondering, I'm not proposing sky blue or anything, but maybe something that would be a fog color that would blend with the sky a little more.
Would that be a comment?
That would be a comment.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
My comment is on the east property line between the existing recycling center and your project.
It appears to me that you're relying on landscaping off the property to screen your project. It's sort of a question, but you can't do that.
It's all one parcel. It's the same property.
Not according to the second sheet of your package. There's two APN numbers.
They're the same APN number.
So you're right.
30 left.
That was correct, and that's a little misleading. They're the same APN number, same property.
Okay. There's a property line clearly on the survey coming down that easterly property.
Yeah, and we need to address that. But it's this was a dark black line around the entire parcel, and then a red and black for the actual site within the parcel.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, that's fine, but this is showing a property line here, or what appears to be a property line on the survey.
Okay.
So fix that, please.
Well, I think that goes around the whole thing. These are the two recycling center buildings.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Gotcha.
There's nothing down the middle between the two.
Gotcha.
Okay.
My mistake.
Okay.
And then I would like to see that concrete slope on the west property line removed and some significant trees planted in there. There's about 6 feet there, and I think you could get something in there that would help mitigate those tanks, because you do see right through the tow yard at those tanks, and there's no landscaping there. We need to have something there. I think that landscaping also, even if it doesn't necessarily hide the tanks, it adds shade and shadow to that yard a little bit, and that helps break up the yard. Ideally, I'd like to see some trees within the compound, but I know that you have constraints with operating that equipment in there, and it's virtually impossible to get that in there. However, you have a talented landscape architect, and if he can find at least one pocket in there that you could get a tree in, I'd be happy. On the rolling gate, detail 8, if the commission agrees to have sheet metal as a screen panel, that arc of the top of the screen should be below the spikes.
Okay.
Minor detail.
Just the spikes themselves.
Correct.
There Up by the art museum on the side, on the lower side. There was a gate through there.
Yeah, I think it's between the museum shop and the
Yeah,
staircase.
but it's not there anymore. But that was done in a similar way. With there were holes, small holes in the back that you could, if you put your eye up to it, see what was back there. But they didn't. They just gave it a lighter feeling. And I was just wondering if you have to do that, if you shouldn't just do a solid fence.
Maybe, yeah. Then the last comment I have is to be sure and provide us with a sample of the permeable paver.
Of course.
Madam Chair.
Yes, great.
I'm going to echo Mr. DeForest's comment. Is there any way to make those water tanks have some sort of architectural detail in the top circumference, like crenellations? It would have to be done. I don't know. Are they made with what? Are they steel?
Steel.
Sheet steel.
That makes it complicated. But I understand what Mr. DeForest is getting at. You have these rather blobby things. If there was some way to create shadow on the rim of those tanks, so they became sort of like squat Moorish towers, dare I say, I think they would be certainly more pleasant to the eye.
Crown.
My
Yeah,
comment.
crown.
Yeah, crown wall.
That crown with some open, yeah. Matches gate.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Adams?
Mr. Schellenberger?
Mr. Adams, go right ahead, and then we'll go to
Okay.
Mr. Schellenberger.
I echo the. I think a tree is needed on somewhere in a pocket to soften the view of the tower. I also think that I'm just going to make this comment to explore taking away the two prunus that exist and doing an Australian willow. That's a beautiful.
So you have both sides?
Both sides, yeah, because we may get more high, a little bit uniformity. It may do a better job than the prunus are doing.
That's fine.
So, that being said, and then also because the workshop or recycled center is going to be there in some condition, I'd like to see a couple of vines introduced, not the whole way, not covering it, but a couple of landscape architects' choice vines integrated on that long wall. And I think the firewheel tree is a good tree. Good, nice, narrow, interesting tree for that situation. But I think in combination with the maybe 2 to 3 vines on that wall would be a good addition.
Can I respond to one thing that came up?
Oh, no. I'm just making comments.
Yes.
I'm making unless there's some major consideration. Is this supposed to be a dialogue?
No.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Sure.
The building itself, I think the addition has little to no impact on the project, and I really like your idea of doing away with the concrete block band and simplifying the building as much as you possibly can, thereby making the new building addition less expensive and so forth. Anything you can do to work on the towers, the tanks, I mean, would be appreciated up to the point of there's obviously some point that it becomes contrived, and that's what we don't want. And I would like to see as much landscaping as possible and tree cutouts in the sloping portion of that concrete slab, and anywhere else around the perimeter of the project that you can possibly get it. That's all.
Yes.
I need to comment on this. It's an interesting dynamic. We're looking at a public sector versus private sector dynamic, and I would just say that if this were a private development, it wouldn't even be a question. You would be putting in trees along that property line to screen that massing. But doing that forces taxpayers to spend tens of thousands of dollars So with the crown, whatever crown happens at a tank, so I'm of two minds where one, yeah, I'd like to see that screened and I'd like to see an architectural detail there, but I also don't want the taxpayers to spend extra thousands of dollars. So I think that consideration should at least come into the debate. So that's just one dynamic that I wanted to comment on. The other thing is I don't think we've talked about the steel gate at all. I don't think I agree with the sheet metal screen panel. That's typically not allowed in any case, whether it's a mesh or a panel. And I'm not sure it's needed, especially the Ortega. I think we're going to look through to this new facade that is going to be a nice looking little building back there. I don't have a problem with a transparent view through that gate. But maybe, some alternating twists or just some other detailing in that iron there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because this has always been a location of the wells, having the tanks and having it clean, like looking tanks, I think is honest to the site and to the sense that this has always been sort of industrial, always had all these sort of fungi stuff going on. I think the tanks recognizes that, and we've got this nice building here, which is very traditional, very Santa Barbara. There was a dress-up smaller building, and behind there was the tank. So I really have no problem with the tanks. I think you can find a paint that will make it, look smaller and fade into the back. But I think now when they go up without the railing, they should be okay. This side sort of reminds me of the yard over here too. There's an honesty to it. It was always the site of these wells, and now we have all these other tall buildings around it. So even from the quota size, it kind of prevents it from spilling into the neighborhood. So I'm okay with the tanks as they're proposed, and I think in all the additions that all the other commissioners have suggested will help. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I taking numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with most of the comments. Yeah, I think the most important is this view to me. Like you can do something. That's the one about the trees. I mean, that's where I think the pocket trees really should go, because I agree with the comment of leaving the tanks alone, but doing something with the color. I think the addition is perfectly fine, very good. Landscape in general is fine. The gate, I can live with some sheet metal, with some changes, as Mr. Sulin mentioned, and perforations, as Ms. Boucher mentioned. I could live with something like that, and I agree with the comment on the pavers. Gray cobbles, that would be fine. Thanks.
Everybody commented?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Sometimes paint color can be used to really create something special, like the Meridian Studios. I always used to hate that until one day I was walking home with my wife, and the sunset was exactly those colors, and you could not see the buildings. They just disappeared. So I think that there is an opportunity to, maybe it doesn't have to be all one color. Maybe there's something unique that sets it apart. It is what it is. It's a water treatment plant. Maybe we can celebrate it a little bit, and perhaps Heather was mentioning that they are on quite a time constraint. Maybe there'd be a possibility to get, say, Mr. Drury, who's our artist over there, to work with them as a subcommittee and maybe try and come up with something that might be acceptable and kind of unique and fun.
Well, I'm going to ask for a straw vote. All those who wish to actually add architectural improvement of some kind to these tanks, other than the other alternative, which is paint, please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, and that's conditioned that expression, architectural expression, relates to a water feature as opposed to a tower or a...
Right, or water tanky.
Yeah. Thank you. So that architecture has to be related to water.
Tankness, yes. All those raise your hands, please. 2.
How many?
3.
3.
3. All those who are willing to have some paint treatment to these tanks, and otherwise left alone, please raise your hands.
Was that a majority?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Should be 6.
Well, she's voting twice.
The second straw vote was just choosing an appropriate color.
Yes,
Thank you.
treatment, some color treatment.
But does it necessarily have to be sort of a multicolor treatment, or just one color that everybody is happy with?
You will choose
Okay.
an appropriate color treatment.
Okay, not Meridian Studios.
It could be multiple. It could be
Okay. I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to summarize the comments.
Could you ask about the sheet metal backing? I don't care one way or the other. I just
All those who wish to have the sheet metal backing on the gate, please raise your hand.
Well, let me ask you a quick question of the applicant. Is there a need to screen it completely, the stuff in there?
Madam Chair, I made the comment, so I'm not opposed to it. My only point is that every other project that tries to do this with gates has been rejected. This is not allowed. It's one of the reasons why there's a hardware issue for like a man gate, where we don't allow screening, and it creates this hardware issue for panic devices and that type of thing. So we just need to be consistent is my only point. If we want to allow it, great. I would actually welcome that change.
just make a quick comment. I'd be perfectly, and I think it might be appropriate, to have it be open visually on the Ortega Street side, because you've got Joe's very nice building right behind it. But maybe on the eastern boundary, where you're basically looking into the tanks, we could screen that off, and I don't think that's so much a public view issue over there, and wouldn't be as much of an issue. But
Well, the problem I see with that is that the building has no landscape.
true.
So you're looking across an expanse of paving to a vertical wall
Which
through
is
that
why
gate.
I proposed it in the first place, to be honest with you. So
Yeah, so that's my issue with that, and I agree. I know what you're saying. We don't allow a solid gate in the district, but if it were wood, if it were something different, maybe it becomes something different than what you proposed. But I do think it needs to be opaque.
well, let's get a consensus. I thought about wood, but it just didn't seem right to me. With all that metal going on there, it just seems to need to be iron. Okay, so can we get a consensus?
All those who wish to have this as a sheet metal backing on
How about
this.
if you just say opaque?
Opaque. Those who wish to have an opaque gate, please raise your hands.
How many? Everybody?
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I make a quick clarification? Looking, I know there's been a lot of discussion about trees and taking out this sloped concrete, and engineer Carollo just reminded me of something. We don't have it shown on here, but we do have process piping that runs along that side. So along this wall, there's piping, and that would be where the water, inlets and outlets of the tanks would come down along there. Just wanted to bring that to your attention. We will take a look and see if there are places, we can maybe be able to put a tree, but there are constraints with this that we're trying to work with. So, any comments with that would be really helpful.
Well, here's been, look for a pocket, look for an opportunity between piping. And I know piping's really important. So,
thank you.
Or change the direction that the piping is coming out of the tank.
And just to be clear, are we looking to just screen those two vertical tanks, or are you looking to get greenery along that entire property line? No, it's just the tanks.
Just the tanks. Okay.
All right.
it's the visual impact.
Point taken. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With regards to the new addition to the building, it is acceptable, and we would like you to do as you wish, which is simplify the existing building, remove the CMB block and the haunches, as you call them. With regard to landscaping, if you can explore as much landscaping as possible in order to screen those tanks.
I think we need to make that a little stronger. There needs to be landscaping to screen those tanks.
We want you to have more landscaping to screen those tanks.
There shall be. Yeah, thank you.
There shall be landscaping. Screen those tanks.
Can we bind the tanks from the top?
No.
And the tanks may be treated with some color treatment in order to make them fade into
Reduce inside.
But the general consensus is the Malaga Green is just too
I don't think anybody...
intrusive visually. Okay. Okay.
Most of the time it works.
I'll make a motion to include those comments, and how long do you want? 2 weeks?
We're on the fast track.
Ideally, we'd like 2 weeks, yes.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries.
Madam Chair, can I just get one
Yes.
clarification on the fence? So I did hear it mention a wood fence versus metal fence. I understand opaque, but...
No,
so
just
say
opaque.
Metal's okay?
No wood fence. Yeah, metal is okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next item of business is 2420 Garden Street. Including pictures.
Now we are.
And then your photos, can you get those? Can you use those? Those are the photos in. Do you need a so you can put them together? Sure. Do you have a hard copy? Yeah, that's what.
New dog on the way after the trip? Oh, no, that's right. You got one already reserved.
I didn't want to interrupt somebody else, so.
Yeah, I know.
The photo sim? No, this is the
Yes,
photo
and then you're
simulation.
going to do the deed. Between 4 and 6 months, Diane said.
And then that's
To the mail.
Oh, yeah.
3.
Wait.
Nice from you.
Oh, that one goes right in front. That one goes. No, they're different. Nope, different views. So I'm just trying to get them. So we're trying to get them in order. No, I don't want to make her do that. I know how they go. These are not stapled though, and then here's the photos. Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks. And then these are yours.
Yes.
Okay. Boom.
Jeff, you're bringing more.
Should I have, since we talked about that, should that be in? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Will you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes, my name is Jeff Gurrell with Lindvik and Minor Architects, and I'm representing the Hodgetts and their home at 2420 Garden Street. It's the Bernard Hoffman House, and they would like to add a swimming pool and some adjacent site walls. And we'll also be doing some trenching for some utility pipes. And there's the existing driveway that has been altered from the historical pattern, and we'd like to bring that back to that historical pattern. The Hodgetts had purchased the house in 2000, and many of you probably visited the house right after they had purchased it. It was in very, very poor condition inside and out, and they have been wonderful stewards of this property and restored it to a magnificent piece of architecture. And their granddaughter's coming out from France in July, and they would love to have the swimming pool ready for the birthday party.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a little bit of background on this project. We had seen a proposal for a swimming pool two, maybe 3 years ago that the commission had felt was a little too modern in concept. And the direction then given was to come something working off an axis in more of a traditional location. And that's what you're seeing before you today.
Thank you.
So, where we are located here for reference, let me get myself point. Okay, yeah, Garden Street here, and St. Anthony's Seminary is here. The entry gate to the property is here, so you've got a long driveway up to the back. You see the vegetation here, and then a very sheer drop off to the back to a creek down below. And where we would like to place the swimming pool and are proposing would be in this area, to this side of the house. So it has no impact at all to the street. And the question is that does it relate to the house? And we've tried to keep it very simple. You'll notice, and the site plan will show it better, but there's a series of terraces. Like this is the laundry terrace between the caretaker quarters and the house. Then there's another kitchen terrace that are walled off in between, and where we're proposing to add the swimming pool, there's a library terrace here, and we feel like that would be a natural, we have to have a wall to protect the swimming pool by code, and we think that walls as opposed to wrought iron railed fencing is the proper way to go. So we're looking to create another terrace here. To get you oriented to what you're looking at, we'll look at a larger plan. But this area here, if I orient you, this is the house. So you're looking at the house here. There's this fountain and some landscaping that is going to be added to at some point in the future. But if you look down this axis, it's this area here where we propose to add the swimming pool and some flat work to match the existing flagstone flat work that is here. A very simple swimming pool, a 6-foot wall, plaster wall to match the existing that would create the library terrace here, and then a wall off the backside with a pool equipment housing here. It doesn't have a roof on it. Again, that'll be about a 6-foot wall, and then carry that across to terminate it again at this very severe drop-off. There's a railing that's kind of temporary. It's wrought iron, and it's got some pilasters that we'd like to remove and open up this wonderful view, keep that unobstructed. So what you're looking at here is a view directly back to the house. It's here. So we would be looking to carry a wall across this direction and then out this way, and the swimming pool would be in here. So that's a view from here, looking back. Photograph B would be from this location, looking back at the corner. C is looking straight back this direction in plan. So you can see you're not infringing on any neighbors. It doesn't relate to the house properly. Here's D that takes you looking away from the house in the opposite direction to the neighbor. And then here's a view that I wanted to show as you come up the driveway here. You come into this lawn area and you see this side of the house. This is facing garden. And what you would see is we're proposing to add a wall across the back here. And this view is from the fountain, the existing fountain, as you're looking back towards where we propose to put the pool. And we'd like to carry that same axis through and then have a gate opening into the swimming pool. From the street, got a couple of shots here. Is one, as you're on Garden Street and you look in this direction, this beautiful gate that you see is located right here, and it's an old stone wall entry here, and then there's the old carriage house that's now an accessory building permitted. And I'm showing you these pictures to give you an idea of this minuscule little swimming pool in the big grand scheme of things. It's not seen from the neighbors at all or imposing on anybody. This is the entry gate. And then here's an old photo that I took. This was the swimming pool outlined where we're proposing to locate that. So you can see that in relationship to, that would be this back corner of the house. So that's about where it would be located. So we believe we've got enough separation from the house. Very, very simple, and we would hope that it would be a reasonable addition for these folks. This is a photograph of one of the existing walls. They vary some, but typically we're going to be detailing to match the existing, and our gates and so forth are going to carry through with a similar theme to the construction that we have there now. And this is another idea of a walled-off terraced area. So that's the overall picture and concept view. The overall site plan, again the driveway in, and here's the swimming pool at this end of the house and adjacent properties. We're not planning on doing any grading in through here. We want to keep it as natural to what is there as it is now, and come off at this same level as this patio that's existing, and then just carry a very small, simple patio area around. So it's not large. Okay, so here's an enlarged view. Again, simple patio. This wall carries through, keeping this axis through, and this is oriented, just twisted a little, that actually feels better if you sit on the site with the view and its relationship to the house than if you tried to square everything up. And so here's a rough sketch of this would be from the back of the house. If we were to come this way, you drop off that steep slope. So we turn around, look back at the house. This is the wall that would enclose the swimming pool. Very simple, about 6 foot tall. Same detailing as the other walls around the house and the swimming pool. Taking, again, the look at the end of the house, this is how we would enclose. This would be the wall that would enclose the library terrace that's off of, again, this steep cliff. And we would like to terminate, for code reasons, we'd like to bring the wall along and then use a small wrought iron rail for that last piece that you can't build on such a steep slope, just to keep people from coming along around. And then, like an infinity pool, we don't believe that we need a rail that goes around that steep slope, and hopefully we can convince the building department of that. Pretty simple. That's it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for public comment.
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. I would like to reiterate this is a very important house designed by what's his what? Bernard Hoffman didn't do the design. No, it's not George Webb. It's James Osborne Craig. It's a James. Excuse me. It's a James Osborne Craig house. One of his a wonderful example of his work. And also the garden is a Florence Yacht garden, a famous landscape architect. Did some gardens here, but mainly further south. It's a very important garden, and the Hodges have brought many elements back. It looks great. I am concerned. I think you might ask to see the yacht plan. Might help you in your consideration, because the Hodges have a copy of that original landscape plan. Of course, swimming pools weren't part of one's mindset in the 20s, and the Hoffmans put this in. And I can see the granddaughter, certainly a pool would be great for the granddaughter and her friends. I'm concerned about the viewscapes, and I would like and I would think could a fence be used instead of wall? I mean, not a suitably designed fence that would fit the house, but if fencing rather than walls to block viewscapes. And could the pool be more? I mean, the pool is sort of odd because it doesn't angle with the house or really with the. Excuse me. It doesn't angle it. The Florence Yacht design, as you can see, was a fairly formal axial design, and the pool doesn't seem to be on any axis at all. It should be either with the house. I mean, it should be at right angles to the house, I would think, or to the garden path. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for questions from the Commission.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Sharp.
Imagine many of us have the same question, and you've given it a great deal of thought, we're sure. Why isn't the pool on the same axis as all the other elements, not to mention other elements that you're adding in walls and so forth?
Well, this is the Florence Yacht layout, and as an example, this isn't square to that, and this was original. It's one of those things that we placed the pool in different various locations on the site with the blue tape that you saw, and it just feels right. When you look at this with the existing trees that are here and the way it positions and plays with the house, as opposed to having everything square, there's something about this addition and the way the walls were having this slight angle that it just feels right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
It also follows the Secretary of the Interior standards by differentiating the new work from the old.
That too.
Okay. Madam. Oh. No, go ahead, Mr. Adams.
Okay, question here. Where you're proposing to put this pool, what trees are you removing to put it there?
We're not removing any pool trees.
Anything? Just open area. Okay.
Oh, I think Mr.
Go
Shooting
ahead.
was about.
You're working that way down the table.
All right.
You
Shall?
are. Sorry.
Well, I was just curious. I don't think it's a approvable or disapprovable thing, but why the walls? Why the privacy? I mean, this whole site is private. There's no neighbors to look in on you when you're at the pool, and why even bother, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. And if you walk around the site, these series of terraces that they have are walled off, and they just feel absolutely wonderful. They're like an outdoor-indoor space. And this particular terrace, it just turns it into something wonderful. So that is the reason for this wall. The Hodgetts like the feel, as I do, of the wall from this side of the house when guests come, that there is some screening of the swimming pool. And then it just naturally carries around this direction and encloses the pool, making it more comfortable. And they're just really, really adverse to having a wrought iron see-through rail that to them would feel more prison-like.
Madam Chair? Typical of the 1920s, cloistering was something that you see, all through that period, and particularly in this Mediterranean genres.
Mm-hmm.
That too.
Mr. Suding? I think Mr. Suding has been waiting.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you look at the idea of using stone walls instead of plaster?
We talked about that, but the plaster walls in conjunction with the other plaster enclosing walls seem to tighten it. And just
then, have you checked the code lately? Because I think that the height needs to be 5 feet, not 6 feet.
Oh, it could be lower.
Okay. But
yeah,
you're
it could
proposing
be
6
higher.
feet?
Yeah.
Okay. That is all the questions. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You didn't talk much about the new pool equipment yard, unless I missed something? Is
Well,
that
it,
covered? Is that open?
It's
How are
op-
you handling the stack for the heater?
haven't got that far
Okay.
for the stack, but it's a 6-foot wall around it, and we have enough space in here for.
Yeah, plenty of space.
Yeah.
Heaters,
pool equipment
pool
and
heaters
other
don't
stuff.
have stacks.
Well, thanks. That's
Unless
too,
it-
I know.
that too.
Well, no, unless it's roofed. If it's roofed, then it does. But if it's
Then if-
open,
yeah, if it's roofed, it
yeah.
does, yeah.
So you're okay. You're not roofing it. Gotcha.
Yes.
It's interesting, I had in the piece of property next to me, a new pool has gone in with the pool equipment stuff. And the gentleman says that you can't screen it on all 4 sides. Now, I notice that this one is. Without it being screened on all 4 sides, it's exceedingly noisy, and I'm
Well,
just...
I've worked on projects before where that is mandated because of sound, you know, when you relate to a neighbor. And
So are you talking, Louise? Are you saying that because of equipment requirements, it can't be enclosed on all 4 sides?
Well, he can...
Okay, that's not true. It can be enclosed on all 5 sides, as a matter of fact.
Correct.
Mr. Drury?
There was no mention made of the realignment of the driveway?
I mentioned
Or we
that in
not gotten there
Well,
yet?
he did mention that it was going to be realigned
Re-
back to its historic
Oh,
nature.
thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Adams?
I know this is a conceptual now, but what kind of paving would go around the proposed pool? What kind of coping? What kind of materials?
Well, there's an existing flagstone here, cut flagstone, and we propose to match that. Yeah, I wish I had a better picture, but it's a concept. So you can see the stone here, and that same kind of stone and pattern we intend to carry around, and that would be the edge of the pool.
It's very difficult to replicate that.
Yeah. But these, if anybody can do it, it's these folks. I mean, what they've done to restore this house is unbelievable.
You're probably right.
Madam Chair, I
Yes.
have one question. It's a burning question. The pool equipment yard looks huge. Is that, I mean, the pool equipment could be a fourth of that with appropriate doors. Do you have something else? Are you going to put chairs or something? Or
Yeah, there'll be junk.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, some people might call it junk. But
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just have a quick question for the applicant.
Are you on this commission?
The SWIMP requirements, the stormwater management on the plan check, we're coming down hard on every project now. And your SWIMP BMPs need to be on the plans prior to final approval at HLC. So just want to put that out there.
okay, thanks.
I'm going to ask for comments now.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
At first, I did feel that this pool needed to be squared up with the house and squared up with the axis of the parterre garden. That's this garden down here. But I sort of like the quirkiness of it and the fact that it meets the Department of the Interior standards and that it is slightly askew, meaning that it probably wasn't original. So that's okay. Other comments. I would like to see the height of the wall, the plaster wall, reduced to the minimum 5 feet. Most of the other site walls, at least from what I can see in the pictures, are rather low. The stone walls.
They're high. The stone walls are low.
Yeah.
Yeah, the walls that connect to the house are actually higher.
Okay. I would still like to see them lower to 5 feet. Around the equipment yard, I think that they could be 6 feet. And it's nice to sometimes have that variation, and I see that in your section that you are dropping down with the slope, which is also appreciated. That's it.
Thank you. Comments?
Yeah.
Mr. Adams?
Okay, Florence Yock was a great designer. She also designed some of the settings for Gone with the Wind. But I can appreciate how you've come up to this conclusion on the slightly askew angle. I think it'll work fine. But I would, this is not a have-to comment, but I would seriously explore using low stone walls to match the proposed paving. I think it's an opportunity to make this a really special gathering spot. I'm also wondering, the other comment I want to make is be sure you understand the noise levels out of the equipment. Maybe equipment's quieter or whatever, but there might be a need to roof it to attenuate the noise. This is near the Natural History Museum and other important properties, and I'm just concerned about the noise being an open air equipment area, because this might impact noise-wise surrounding properties. Okay, and I appreciate the fact they're locating the pool where no large oak trees will be removed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just one more comment.
Yes.
Before we give this final approval, I would like to see the Florence Yock landscape plan. I think that would be helpful. The termination of this existing parterre garden isn't defined on here other than with the pool. I would like to see what she had defined as the termination of that.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I really think we should go over there and see the site. Not that we don't trust you or anything, but I think it's really important, because I think what can happen is a pool like that, even though it may be simple and it's removable and so forth, it can really wreck the sense of the site. Because this side, you come out of the library and you have this was this rural sense of this site, and the way the field was to bleed right into the canyon down there and so forth. And I also would like to have in my mind how you would see what is the feeling of the swimming pool as you look at from the stairs down here and from the driveway. I'm sure you've really considered sensitivity, but I cannot approve it without, in my mind, fully knowing how it will be. I'm concerned about the walls. I feel there's too much of it. Also, I mean, the swimming pools now, I think they have these covers where you don't even need, fencing or something.
You actually have to have those. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Cover?
Really? Even with a
Yes.
Really?
Two out of three
Right.
safety requirements.
Oh.
Yeah.
So anyway, I guess I'm just concerned about that, the formality of this one, and especially the pool house, the equipment. So for me, I'll just have to go take a look on the site before your next.
Commissioner Murray, are you also, maybe I'm suggesting it, is that in some way, shape, or form it be staked out? You said that blue tape photograph that you had was an old photograph. I am assuming it's not staked out any longer.
That's correct.
So, in order to really get a sense, it would be helpful, I think, for everybody if the somewhat story polled, so to speak.
understory pool.
Yeah. Story tape. But I mean, I don't want to put the owners through hoops. But I agree with Commissioner Murray that
For myself, this will come back. I just want to see how it will be, because I think this is a very important part of the house. You step out of the library. Yeah, and I think, I agree. Thinking about the site, this is probably the best place for the swimming pool, because there's no real other sort of flat area that is the sun and the open space without impinging on the other. But it just, if you were down here and looking up there, what would you see? What would be the feeling like? And I think seeing the plans also would really help.
Photograph here. There you go. This is what you would see.
Can you put it on camera, please?
Zoom in.
They changed it.
Yeah. You can see that it's you would see a bit of the wall through the trees, and it's actually feels more private once you get beyond that element. So it's, I don't see that it's.
The house is to the right.
And the house is to the right. As you through the picture, you can kind of see that it's once you get past the big tree and the opening, it's just open grass, and then it drops off.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We also need to see where that big tree is on this plan. I don't see it called out.
Okay.
Or any other significant trees over 4 inches in diameter at breast height that relate to this pool.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one
Yes.
quick comment. Jeff, being surrounded on 4 sides by masonry wall and plaster and so forth, I think they're going to eventually have some real concerns about the pump noise. And if there's a jacuzzi, that makes it even worse because they really have a high-pitched whine. But a regular pump, and it's on during the day and quite a few hours normally, it's going to make it so it's not the peaceful, quiet, serene atmosphere that they currently enjoy. And there's a lot of ways of doing that, I suppose, burying it and putting a roof on it and digging into the hillside somewhere without hurting other neighbors. But that's a very incessant, irritating noise.
If we have a roof over it, did that trigger a modification? Then it becomes an accessory building, doesn't it?
Is it in the setback?
It's not in the setback,
No.
but if you're over 500 square feet of
I
accessory, which the existing is, and
I'd have to check on that, but it very well might.
I believe
they're
that
right,
triggers a
for accessory.
modification.
Let me get some clarification on this. So, does that have to do with the size that's being proposed, or does that just have to do with the roof over it?
A roof over it. It would make it enclosed.
It becomes an accessory building.
They're maxed out on their detached accessory
You can also isolate the pump.
floor area.
Only the pump,
That's true too.
which is done frequently.
Yeah, sure.
In a vault.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, I'm sure that they would be interested in doing something like that.
Just be mindful of it, that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
And then the other comment I wanted to make is it's going to be of concern the type of stone you choose, the type of mortar joints, that style. We're going to need to understand that if you're proposing gates that match in the door, we'll want to see those elevations. We'll want to see color samples.
That
I'm
would
not
be-
saying
that
we're
would be
at
the
that
next step.
point. I'm just giving you the road ahead.
I just mentioned I'm really trying to work towards a simple design here and keep the owners that have I think are trustworthy. You can see what they've done with the house to kind of keep them on track with their granddaughter coming from France, and I'm worried about the comments that I heard were positive, and I'm worried about the delay. To set up a time and do the blue tape and that sort of thing, relative to something that's fairly simple. If possible, and that's for discussion, if we could move past that, then I can then dive into this next step, of course, which is that detail, and be able to bring that back quicker, thinking of the owner.
Let me just make a point to the commission. Okay, first of all, there's trees that need to be located on
Sure.
that plan.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about the trees coming out of that central garden, the trees provide some kind of, at least skyline transition. So it's not necessarily, they relate, but they're almost there's a separation by the trees, but we need to see where those trees are. We need to understand what type of tree they are. We need better photographs from that central garden, looking closer into where that pool is going to go.
Just one quick comment. I was the one that made the comment to story pull it or to tape it out. I rescind that.
Okay.
One more quick question.
Yes.
Can, unlike most walks and paved areas in the city, be impermeable, such as this pool deck is proposed to be? I don't know.
You mean not permeable?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't do a flagstone walkway anymore?
I don't know. I couldn't do a flagstone
Wow.
in the city walk without making it permeable in the joints. Period.
Whoa.
No argument.
Okay.
6 months ago.
We are an hour.
That's a detail.
We're
Okay.
an hour late.
It is.
We're an hour.
This is an hour late.
I'm going to
Look
make a
into
point.
it.
You can use paving as long as you tip it into the landscaping and keep the drainage on your property. If you do that, you're earth friendly, and it would be considered. Driveways, they like to see permeable.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we are. Oh,
It will be okay if I just swing by the site and take a look.
well, I'm going to do a straw vote. How many people feel that we should make a site visit? Please raise your hands.
Madam Chair, though, in the course of the review, though, I don't want to. This can be concurrent. With I think the next step is going to be a preliminary, and maybe even preliminary final, but just between then and now, right?
Yeah, but I just want to.
Okay.
I cannot make a decision without seeing the site.
So who wanted a site visit?
I did.
Michael? Craig? Just so it looks like a majority, so
Yes.
if the applicant could contact me, we can
Okay.
set that up, and I will contact the commissioners.
I'm going to summarize the comments. Because there were no divergent comments regarding the axis alignment, I believe that the majority of the commission is in favor of the skewed alignment that you are showing for the pool. That we would like more information. We would like to see the Florence Yock plans. We would like to see more trees above a 4-inch diameter shown on the plans. And at some point, we're going to schedule a site visit so that we can confirm in our own minds our decisions about these intentions. And you have been advised to consider the noise generation and the visual impact of the walls and the pumps.
Sorry. Jeff, can you also just overlay on the landscape plan the location of the pool, just a dash line, just locate it, the proposed over the...
On the Yock plan?
Yeah,
Oh.
please.
I will do that. The yacht plan is what I have drawn on. It expands towards Garden Street. It doesn't expand towards the pool anymore.
Yeah.
Good to know, but let's see that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for a 2-week continuance.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Comments only. This is
Oh,
environmental assessment and historic resource. We're okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Abstain? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
You're welcome.
I think.
Anytime.
We're now going to see 1816 State Street. We are an hour behind, so please be succinct in your presentation and our comments.
Hi, my name is Brian Murphy. I'm the architect on the project. You've seen this previously, when last we were here, we had a few comments that...
Yes, if I may, I'm going to read those comments. Continued 2 weeks with the following comments. The applicant's response to the request that the design be simplified is appreciated, particularly the southwest elevation on State Street. Explore returning the southeast elevation facing the parking lot to the Monterey style with its simplicity and charm. Provide a landscape plan, and the existing and proposed plan should be in a more clear presentation.
And would the other guest introduce himself for the record?
Ken Sterling, I'm Mr. Peeney's contractor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, we've incorporated Mr. Sharp's suggestion to pull the stairs back so we can resolve our handrail as it then wraps around that front corner and holds that first step back from the edge of State Street there. We are presenting the plan hasn't changed significantly, but we're presenting having restudied the elevations, the southwest, or about 43 degrees to north-south there, is staying largely as we presented it before, but significantly restudying the southeast elevation, going back to what's existing, the columns and wood columns and beams, incorrectly noted on my plan. I missed changing that. That says plaster, but those are really back to the existing wood columns and beams, and carrying our arches through, still in the this portion of the building, doing a few arches in that area to kind of bring that look around, and then also studying again the building in a second manner that to me brought those arches through in a more pleasing fashion, having arches just on the lower floor, doing sort of a tiered approach where we sort of a hybrid of the two schemes that we tier the columns with a plaster and arch system on the first floor only, and then the existing wood columns and beams on the floors, second and third floors above. Trying that look a little better through the project, I think, and not having the building look so spindly as it kind of currently does in its, in my opinion, in the existing state. And again, our real stone walls, true Santa Barbara sandstone, tiled dome, as we presented it before, redoing the wrought iron railings from a very minimal looking railing that's there currently to something with a little more decoration to it.
And your landscape plan?
Yes, we've been working with, thank you, reminding we've been working with Julio Vena on that, and unfortunately he wasn't able to be here today out of town, but he's given us a preliminary look at what he was thinking to do with the landscape, doing a blue oak grass in the low parking areas. Let's see, his trees he was thinking were the acacia, pocket trees, I think some olives, screening this back area with podocarpus. Give us a pretty solid screen there to the residential neighborhoods behind us.
Thank you. Are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, let's go to questions from the commissioners.
I have a question. Can we go back to the color elevation?
Maybe I don't understand. Why is that green? Is that a green paint color or
It's
choice?
currently a green, actually.
It's currently a green.
Yes, and just haven't really addressed the issue of colors at this point.
Okay, dark green. It's painted or
It is painted a dark green.
painted. Okay.
We have the photos, Susan?
Okay, I just wanted to understand what the green represented.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. Is the second floor plan not showing me a handrail that I should be seeing out on the balcony? And then,
Yes,
so
that
these are
outer
low.
line represents a handrail as well as the edge.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, let's go to comments. And please, if you do agree,
Madam
say so.
Chair? I wasn't here for the last concept review, but it was for the first one, so I think I'm cleared to comment. I was here for your first presentation, but not 2 weeks ago. It seems like my comments then were that, as I recall, the original presentation was a little more complex in terms of its visual presentation. This seems to have been simplified a little bit. I think the simpler the better. So I would give it a more positive comment than I had the first go-around. But I do have a question of the amount of ornamentation in the portico underneath the tower. It seems just a little excessive. And that's my only negative comment. Otherwise, I think it's on the money.
Could you point to it here in the...
Yes.
Are you talking about this?
I am. Exactly.
Okay.
Surround.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Do you wish to comment on the two alternatives that he has shown? One which shows a Monterey lower floor and the other shows an arched floor? Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I probably should have caught this the last time. It concerns me that this is a replaced window with a couple French doors and a balcony,
Yes.
which really crowds down upon these two windows and doesn't relate to the windows at all. And I understand, but this is all new, so that really could be one arch that's centered or some other scheme that I think would be better than trying to force these two. And I think that the ornamentation, as Commissioner Drury said, this stonework really crowds that balcony over there a little too much. It doesn't have to be that high. More negative space around it would help that balcony. I prefer the Monterey rendition of this week, and I think it's come a long way and it's pretty close.
Could you take this more to a balconette condition, maybe give it a little more space?
It's really forced in there.
Further comments?
Yeah. I like the planting
palette that the landscape architect came up with. There's a couple misspelling of grass species, but that's okay. We'll let him get away with that. But just let him know, as this drawing moves forward, it has to have a planting plan, water conservation statement, it has to have an irrigation plan, automatic weather smart controller, all those water conservation measure details. As it moves forward, it's going to need that more than conceptual plant locations.
Right.
Okay.
Our next stop, I believe, is Planning Commission or City Council.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Peugeot.
Yeah, I kind of like the second scheme better. I like just about everything in this project. I kind of like the way it sits here better. The only thing I have quite a serious problem is the way of the balcony, the way, where is the floor plan? I think I mentioned it last time, it just seems like an awkward way. This portion right here, I think this should follow the roof, it should be the way it was, it just goes straight. I mean, you do gain a couple of little areas, but it adds some weirdness to the elevations, you come out in the open where it rains, and you go around, and then you go back again over there, and you get back in there again. I just don't see that as being... plus it covers these other planters. I just see this section over here it doesn't add to the project. It makes this portion right here, it is awkwardness. Right now it's a straightforward, it's a roof. It makes sense to walk on the arcade to follow the roof, not to go out. Other than that, I like everything that you've done. I see the point here in the front balcony. I agree with that. But I prefer the option where it seems to be more of a base. But I can live with the other one too, if that's what the board prefers.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I also like the Monterey option. The second option, I think it is here in the drawings.
Pardon me, is that which one?
The option 2.
The arches below and the Monterey above.
Right, and then but I'd like to see what you're going to do with the walls that you're calling them the 36-inch high balcony courtyard walls. Are those plaster? Are they a wood wall? Or and I just how those die into the existing wood posts is an important detail. So I'd like to see how that looks going forward.
Further comments? I would like a straw vote then on which there are two options that are presented. So can we give this applicant some direction regarding which of these options? All those who wish to see all three floors shown as a Monterey, please raise your hand. All those who wish to see the second option then, which is the arches below and the Monterey on the second and third floor, raise your hand. Okay. I'm going to summarize the comments, which are that we all prefer this option with the arches below and the Monterey above. We appreciate the fact that you explored the option that we requested and that you came up with an alternative that we like. I would think that the majority of the Commission would like to see more of a separation between this surround and this up here, a little sort of perhaps dropping down of the ornamentation as shown here, some reworking of these two apertures in relation to these windows below.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
More of a separation between your pointing and for the minutes we would need.
The arch surround at the street and the little balcony opening up above on the southwest elevation. And there has been some comment, and I'd say I tend to agree, that the awkward circulation that you're proposing in order to enclose a few exterior courtyard is something that we'd like to see you revisit. I think I'm looking for a motion.
So moved. You had 2 weeks, good, or going to the Planning Commission?
Going to Planning Commission.
So those would be our comments to the Planning Commission.
So what was that, indefinite continuance to the Planning Commission with those comments?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next item is 920 Summit Road, the Historic Structures Report.
Please, one more.
Oh, really? Will you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Pamela Post of Post Hazeltine Associates.
Thank you.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. This is an addendum to your Historic Structures Site Report. Would you like to sort of cast an overview about it?
Encapsulate, yeah. Yes, this is an addendum that was required for some relatively minor changes made to the building after the original report was approved last November. On the north elevation, some two windows under the tower are going to be changed to French doors, multi-light French doors, and these, of course, were not original, so these are not original windows. On the north elevation, they're going to reopen the original entry and remove that kind of Chigurh-esque design that was done in, I think, 96 by Bob Easton. And then on the west elevation, they're going to change some windows, again, from windows to multi-light French doors. Yeah, do you want to?
This is the approved plan down below in gray, and then the color is the proposed.
Previously,
revisions.
yeah.
The most,
This is the this is
approved
previous,
last fall.
yeah, last November.
And what they're proposing, as Pam said, is to take these two windows, which are not original because all the glazing and the frames were replaced in '98 for the entire building, and replace those with French-style doors with divided lights at the top. The purpose of the divided lights is to emulate the overall historic pattern for the windows of the country club, which were divided lights. And then also these French doors, I believe, here and here would also receive the same kind of pattern of divided lights at the top.
For
And then on the
consistency.
west elevation. This is the approved plan again below, with an enclosure for the women's sort of lounge spa area. And the approved plan, I believe, if I remember correctly, was for a window or a window flanked by French doors. And what they're proposing to do is just do a
make it
4-part French door,
doors.
which would also have divided lights to match those that are proposed for the south elevation. And going back to on the north elevation, I forgot to mention something Pam had talked about, and that's that the historic entrance to... Oh, I don't have it with me.
Yeah, I guess we don't have the north
It's in the report,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. There you go.
Originally, the entrance... Can we find that? So we
Yeah,
can show
I'll
the
find it.
commissioners? I'm sorry, I thought I had that with me.
Keep talking.
I'll
Keep talking.
Okay.
Keep talking.
And the other proposed alteration is
Okay.
to the adjacent building. They want to sort of conflate together the two pro shops and the sub or below grade golf cart storage into one structure. And in the report, there are a number of
Ours,
illustrations of
we,
that.
yeah.
Unfortunately, these didn't come out too well.
Yeah.
So we included
This
the
is our
color.
copy.
This detail here above this entrance was added, as Pam said, in 98. And this was the original entrance when the country club was built. When it was originally designed by Bertram Goodhue and then built in the late teens. And so the proposal is to put a set of doors in here to sort of reactivate this entrance. To take this off, since this entrance has been remodeled a lot. But that sort of detail in that placement is not really appropriate. So the applicant's proposing to reopen this door and take this off so it re-emphasizes the historic entrance. And to go on from there, there's some changes, as we noted, to the country club, the golf
pro
carts,
shop.
pro shops, which is a fairly complex kind of structure. Essentially, here are the approved plans, and above here is two of the elevations for the proposed revision, which would link the two pro shops together, basically on top of this below grade.
And this is
golf
actually
cart
going to be
storage.
smaller in scale and massing than the one that was approved.
It's a little more picturesque.
Yeah.
And those are essentially the most critical of the changes. A couple of others with light fixtures, which are detailed in the report, and a couple of details on the landscaping.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any public comment on this report? Seeing none, I'll take questions from the commissioners.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Mr.
Page
Seaton.
11. First paragraph. Restoring the original entrance to active use would enhance the building's ability to convey its historic appearance and architecture, thereby meeting standards 2, 5, and 6. I'd like the preparer of the report to elaborate on that a bit more. If you look at the elevation A3.3, in my somewhat trained or untrained eye, however you want to look at it, clearly that gable end below the tower, to me, reads as a primary entrance. Granted, yes, the original entrance was further east, but I think you need to kind of explain why maybe that entrance was further to the east. The other question I have, were these buttresses that flank the existing entrance now, were they original?
I'm sorry.
Can we answer that now, or do we wait? I don't want to.
If you could answer that particular question now.
That was an open. I'd have to go back and look, but originally that was not a porte cochere, but it was an open porch.
Because it was my recollection when we reviewed this some time ago that those were added, but I can't be
They
positive.
were added, and I just can't remember if it was by George Washington Smith, because he carried out a
Right,
fairly
I don't think
extensive
they were added by George.
but it was.
Could you resolve that for me, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
and to get back, to, if I may, on the original entrance, is the internal layout of the club has changed. Originally, that was the main entrance, and the far end of the building where the main entrance is now is closer to where the service yard was. So in '98, they sort of rotated that around, and where you used to walk in through that entrance at the east end of the building, go down a hallway, go down another long hallway that opened up into the main sort of reception room. And so that was altered. That was the historic pattern from when Bertrand did design the building.
Okay. Can you elaborate then in that paragraph as to why? Because it relates to the internal circulation.
Sure.
I think is enough to say about that. Page 15. Right above 4.4, the last paragraph of 4.3.4, you say, please refer to section 3.32. I couldn't find any such section. And I prefer not to see, please refer to section such and such. I think it's easy enough to do a cut and paste job and put that section in there.
Okay.
Throughout the document. You also have that on page 14, and I won't name all of the places where that sort of convention occurs. In section 4.4 on page 15, that whole section, I think, needs to talk more about the interface of the space that is between the shops and the storage and the clubhouse. If you look on page A1.4, and A2.5 and A2.6, since that pro shop is going in and the two pro shops are going in, how does that affect that elevation of that building on that west end and the spaces that are between the proposed building and the existing building?
Well,
Let me just finish, please. Page 16, under 4.6, first bullet point, last sentence. Instead of saying as noted in the HSR, the final landscape plan will require review by HLC, please say as per the project's conditions of approval, comma, the final landscape plan will be reviewed by HLC. Page 18, first bullet point, the response starts with the revised landscaping scheme would informal in nature. I think you're missing a word there. Madam Chair, that's all.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right.
To find any original pictures or of the doors?
No.
Any,
No more.
any
none other than just the sort of the very, distant shots. Yeah.
The ones that were in the report reviewed last fall were the most detailed ones that we found. And one of the reasons, we didn't go into, in this addendum, a lot of detail about the placement of the proposed golf storage and pro shops, because that location, it was essentially the same location that had been approved in the fall. And we were addressing in this report the changes
to that building rather than specifically that location, which had been approved. It's my understanding that, and perhaps Jake could clarify this for us, that the Historic Landmarks Commission purview on this is, as far as the detailing for the pro shop and the golf cart storage building that is outside the purview of landmarks. But if staff could confirm that or elaborate on that for me.
I don't have the drawing. I know the drawing you're referring to. When we went out
It's
to
in
do
the
a site
report.
visit, we walked through it. And
Yeah, it was our understanding it was like the scale and massing, but not the
It's
detail.
figure 2 in the report.
Yeah, your boundary kind of.
Well,
this was the boundary that was agreed on by this commission at a site visit where we actually walked it and made a decision. The reason for things happening may not look as clear on this small drawing as they did when we were actually walking it. So all I can say is that we had our reasons at the time that we were there for choosing the boundary the way it falls.
Thank you. I'll look for a motion from the commission unless there are further comments, and perhaps Mr. Suding would like to make the motion.
I'll make the motion for the report to be revised per the comments I made.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? That motion carries.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I recommend that the revisions just come back to staff and we'll make sure that it gets into the report.
That's fine. So this is an approval with those revisions, right?
Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Did you accept the report with those comments, or did you say to revise the comments? Because if you're
Okay.
accepting it, you need to state that.
Let me rephrase the motion.
Thank
then.
you.
Final approval with the condition that the report be revised to include the comments made by Commissioner Suding and then approved by staff.
Submitted to
Then
staff.
submitted to staff.
Thank you. And who seconded the motion?
I did.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? That motion carries. Thank you.
Might as well stay.
We've got the materials on.
The next item is the preliminary review of 920 Summit Road.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
We're still practically an hour. I'm trying. Sorry.
7 minutes to time.
We're catching up minute by minute.
Hey, how are you doing? Good. Get some color ones here. Is it okay? They're the same. They're just in color. Is it okay?
I swear they're the same.
Swear.
Where's that Bible?
Yeah.
Will you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Sam Mapus, landscape architect.
David Van Hoy, architect.
Steve Welton, agent.
Thank you. You need an intro or just keep going? Okay. We're here to share with you some refinements that have made to the project during the design development phase of work. And I wanted to start off just in terms of some clarity. It's my understanding, anyway. This is the graphic that came out of our earlier meeting, showing, after we walked the site, and this is laid over the approved site plan. The project was approved by Planning Commission last fall, and the line basically includes the setting for the main clubhouse building as the lawn to the south, the pool area, the parking area directly north on the lower level, and on this graphic it showed the western boundary as being the edge of the tennis courts. The tennis courts are not included, and the courtyard, or at least at that point it was the courtyard, and the golf pro shop was actually part of your purview as being part of the setting. So that's what we're operating under as far as the next 20 minutes is concerned. So The refinements within that area of HLC purview really are driven by the desire, as the program developed, to consolidate the golf pro shop, tennis pro shop, and to achieve a closer relationship between a golf drop-off area and the pro shop building and the drop-off area and the tennis courts. This is a helpful graphic, I think, for everybody. It's your sheet A1.4. And what it shows is the dash lines are the previous locations of the 4 tennis courts. And you can see that the new tennis courts have been turned slightly and put together in a way that one of the other benefits of this approach is significantly less grading in this area. There's less grading for the tennis courts because they're more aligned with the existing topography, and they're done in a way when they're closer together that we require a lot less cut and fill. And rather than building a cart barn below one of the tennis courts, we're using an area that's already sort of high and low and putting the cart barn underneath the consolidated golf pro shop and tennis pro shop. And pulling it inland, you can see this was the previous pro shop location. It's been pulled back. I think from the city view, this will be actually kind of has the effect of sliding the clubhouse forward, if you would, visually, and has a good relationship for drop-off and so forth for getting to golf and tennis. Basically, the other refinements are a slightly larger to the south lawn area, and some refinements in the pool area that we'll be discussing. The previous item for the historic report actually identified many of the small refinements to the exterior. We'll go through these really quickly and answer any questions that you might have. If we zoom in on that side area, then we're looking at the the edge of the tennis court, the pro shop building. We'll look at the elevations in just a moment. This is the deck that you arrive on. There's a building here. The buildings are still split into two, so they separate out into smaller massing that is developed to be compatible with the and not challenge the Goodhue clubhouse building. There's a small tree and a small courtyard here for kart staging, putting green, event lawn. This has by moving the lawn out, there's now about a 4-foot high rubble wall that's using some of the reclaimed sandstone from the tennis court walls, which is part of the condition of approval. That'll be planted out in the foreground that Sam will explain to you in just a little bit. And then the pool area, the refinements since the approval were really the addition of this half-round area at this end that reinforces a bit more formalized racetrack shape to the pool area, because a kids' pool was added, and I'm sure the kids will appreciate that. The previous design, or the approved design, didn't have that kids' pool. And the area between the parking area on the east and the entrance has been reconfigured, and I have an older plan if you'd like to see it. But one of the comments was to order this a bit. One of the HLC comments from the past meeting. So we come in through a gate, and there are 3 cabanas here, and now this area that's sort of a no man's land currently. If you remember from the site visit, there's a wall along here and then sort of an area behind the fence. That's now being utilized, coming up some steps for some cabanas and a little new trellis here for food and beverage service to the pool area. Really very little change in the parking lot to the north. And you've seen the elevations. These are slightly larger version, but basically the format here is to have the version of the project that was approved at the Planning Commission below, and just notating the changes. And so there are a doorway that's being eliminated, a trellis that did not exist in this plan that's new trellis for that food and beverage area. Slightly different design with some corner pilasters, plaster pilasters for the pool windscreen. The rotunda, remember the round part on the south side of the building, the upper half will remain more the same than the changes that were proposed previously. The windows will be changed out and simplified without the significant breakup around the rectilinear piece, but the ground floor will still be squared off. There are currently arched windows on the ground floor, as you may recall, and so that has not changed. There are some steps and a fountain and some basically more landscape elements and patio elements that I'll let Sam talk to in the foreground. A change out of these 2 windows. These are not historic. These are existing, and basically basically taking those openings and taking them to the floor and doing basically some quad fold opening doors with a gesture towards the detailing on the top of all the new doors that you're looking at. Removal of an existing non-historic trellis on the end here, and taking 3 of the 3 non-historic. These are windows that were added in the late 90s. Renovation of the project, and actually you'll see those are being added to the pool house, so they're being moved. And really these changes are going to show better on the west elevation. So if we go to the west, we're looking at the side of the rotunda here, the trellis being removed. There was always a courtyard here, and there was always a trellis, but the courtyard walls the design has been refined slightly. They were stone before, and now they're plaster and a slightly different trellis design than the approved. You see that there was a larger trellis, so the trellis has shrunk a little bit, and the stone is being used elsewhere on site. Some new wood doors and light fixtures.
What happened to the stair here?
The stair is still there. It's a different graphic. The stair is behind this. You still see the same wall here. It's just not dashed in. And here you see on the pool building where the 3 windows are being used and to help kind of freshen up the face of the existing pool building that faces the pool. What I think is a really, really nice evolution of this project is the restoration of the original main entrance to the club. I might add a little to your earlier conversation. Originally, the original Goodhue design, this was a lounge with a shed tile roof that was only accessible actually from the inside, and it had a little fireplace in the corner of it. It was converted to the main entrance in the 1990s renovation project, and currently then this was decommissioned, the entrance, and it's now just a blank wall. The previous design was keeping that, and now there's with the utilizing the existing internal circulation to use this as an entrance and play this entrance down a bit, so that the club, it's very long and has the circulation. It actually makes things work much better inside to restore this and to be able to utilize both of those access points. And on the east, not a lot going on here. Again, light fixtures, a new gate entering that procession through along the side of the pool area, and so forth. And that's that. Very little has changed from the approved.
Why does that look different? There's a wall here. That's not
I think that is a new wall because outboard here.
It's part of where that pool cabana area is behind
Right.
that wall. Right,
Right,
now
so
it's a slope that's completely open, so
Right.
it's going to be part of that enclosure for that gated area into that east side of the pool.
The cabanas that are in this area are actually at a little bit higher altitude because they're going uphill there as it goes towards the service yard. And the new Pro Shop building, this is the south elevation. This is what would face the city. And you can see that it's, and I think it's really important to check out just the edge of the page here too. This is the west edge of the existing clubhouse building. So you get a sense of scale and relative elevations of these buildings. This building is really placed sort of half a floor down, so that it's a half a floor, a little bit down and a little bit up from the 2 levels of the main clubhouse building. And you can see that the architecture has been developed with the same materials palette as the main clubhouse building, similar eave detailing and so forth, proposing clad windows on the exterior, plaster finish, canvas awnings. I think a nice articulation of the form, so it'll break down a little bit more than the previous design. The square footage is, there's a little bit more square footage in the, I think there's about 1,000 square feet in big round numbers, more in terms of tennis and golf pro shop area. There's 3,000 square feet less of the cart barn area because it's more efficient, because it doesn't have to be the same size as a tennis court. It just has to be the same size as necessary for the cart barn. So overall the building is smaller than when it was scattered into various pieces. This is the west elevation that faces the tennis courts. You see the sort of paseo that goes through and splits the tennis pro shop from the golf pro shop, and you see the detailing here. This is basically 2 small buildings, and then the plinth, if you will, that is the top of the cart storage, and the same views from the previous design. And we're going around the building. This is the north elevation, the uphill elevation. very quiet to this side, and basically you will drive from the south side, pick up your cart, go through this little tunnel, and make your way up near the very northern property line to the first tee and to the 16th tee. So this is a very major thoroughfare in terms of golf traffic. And then this is the elevation, the east elevation that faces the existing clubhouse. And again, you're seeing the other end of this and seeing the articulation of, again, the pro shop, golf pro shop, tennis pro shop, and restrooms. And I'm going to pass it off to Sam to talk about landscape.
So overall, we're looking at substantial conformity in this area that we're talking about, but the trees that were important, certainly to some of the last comments, were the Canary Island date palms, and they are remaining and staying the same in this entry alley, and in fact, as a signature tree, going to be used in this new fountain area in the parking lot, and also as a signature area tree into the entrance to the pro shop and tennis facility. So those trees are being utilized. We also added the olive to the plant list. It was not there before, and it'll be part of the accent trees throughout the main area. The Metrosideros is another main tree in the parking lot that's being retained, and the parking lot trees, the cork oaks. David had mentioned, I go to the other plan that's a little bit of a blow-up, a small tree in this area here where I really think that there'll be some substantial trees here and here as we develop it, probably more like the live oak and maybe even the Monterey cypress. So we'll be looking at, some substantial trees and vertical elements in the foreground of this small building. The Canary Island palms, again, are in the parking lot and throughout this area. The flowering trees we'll be using will be things like the Arbutus marina, the jacaranda, the Metrosideros, throughout the whole small pro shop area that's, again, scale-wise so much less than the main clubhouse. But the plantings throughout the pool area, I think, as David mentioned, will be of a lusher bird of paradise. It's a large, giant bird of paradise. Foundation shrubs, again, will be many things of this nature on the plant list. So extensively, the plant list is for the whole property, but we'll be working with a lot of historic plantings close into the building as we develop that. Tree-wise, I think it's important to know that some of we had these plans that have been refined that show all the trees throughout, and the matrix here that's been developed from Duke McPherson throughout the project has been taking out trees that have been, of course, dead and or in poor condition, and then adding trees throughout in the areas, the configuration of the golf course, and certainly the new pro shop. So we end up with 110 new trees overall, some of which I can show you. The substantial trees in the area that we're talking about are the stone pines. These red indications are the trees that are going to be removed, large eucalyptus in this area of the old cart barn down through the golf course area. We're dealing with new alignments of the holes that certainly take out large groups of trees. But in the clubhouse in particular, there are some stone pines here that will be removed and transplanted down to, not underneath this green post. We're not hiding that. I don't know why that was there, but certainly this area is going to be between a T and a green, so the stone pines give us some nice definitions between those two. And again, once I had mentioned the Canary Island palms, we are not changing in this area. We'll be adding some to this area to kind of, again, make that signature tree more pronounced through the clubhouse when we take them and transplant them from the golf course itself.
Madam Chair, I'm Michael Berman, staff with the Planning Division. I just want to point out that the HLC's jurisdiction doesn't include the whole golf course, and to save time...
They're just being a courtesy.
Thank you. I was just trying to kind of summarize some of the tree areas.
He's making us feel important.
You have a big job.
If I could just have one final comment on the project. The primary motivation for us to return to you at this point was because, as David pointed out, we did submit for a substantial conformity determination to cover some of the changes that all the changes that he's run through with you. we're agendized for preliminary approval, but we realize that our plans probably aren't at that level at this point. We are generating drawings, which I think will meet that. We also have your comments from the previous meeting, which we're happy to comment on if you like, if you want to read them. But I guess the thing we're primarily interested in is if you think we're moving in the right direction with our changes or not. We have been to the Architectural Board of Review as well for the changes, and we are working with staff on that substantial conformity.
Thank you. Does the Commission wish me to read the previous comments?
Yes, please.
Okay. Continued indefinitely with positive comments to the Planning Commission. Number 1, incorporating some of the original elements and intent of Bertram Goodhue's design into the south elevation as it may have been done by the Goodhue firm are a good direction. 2, further develop incorporating more window details similar to the Goodhue intent at the fitness center and create more of an object relation in terms of the golf shop to the rest of the campus. 3, in addition to better integration of the golf shop into the entire site plan, there should be further refinement of the architectural design to be more in keeping with the original building. 4, salvage the wood in the badminton building in some way. 5, restudy the curvilinear walkway by the pool. 6, landscape. A, retain or somehow respect the arc of the Canary Island date palm trees that exist. It was suggested that all the healthy Italian stone pine and canary palm trees located at the north of the building be saved and moved appropriately. B, add the proposed olive trees to the plant list. C, study consolidating some of the landscape pockets by the pool instead of creating multiple thin strips so that fewer larger areas are created. And the Commission comment that the stonework should be reused on the site.
Madam Chair.
I'm going to ask for public comment, if I may. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, questions from the Commission?
Yeah. First question I have is about the rotunda, and why is it not? As I recall, it was the circular element was the original element. It wasn't faceted, and then it was rebuilt. The rotunda. Yeah. Is that how it was originally? My understanding was that you were going to bring it back to a complete circular or semicircle. That's the original. That's in the approved plan that we've just seen.
Correct. The rotunda is from memory about a 1957 addition to the original Goodhue building. The building did not have the rotunda. There was actually a loggia that went across the front of that area, and the rotunda was added for additional space. And there's a picture. In fact, why don't you hand that one down to the gentleman? This is what it looks like today, and it is indeed faceted. And so the proposal now is to really, from the mid belt line up, to leave it pretty much the same massing and change the windows out and get rid of the blue glass and get rid of the cutouts or all the very fine breakup of the window panes on the perimeter, and then to square off the lower story windows. As you recall from the site visit, the room that's created inside that rotunda on the lower floor has an extremely deep floor plate and a very low ceiling, and it's very unfriendly for anybody that's not sitting on the window. So the idea is to enlarge the opening to make the interior space superior. And in my opinion, I think the square base with the arches above is more successful than arches over arches.
I think he was asking whether it was a circular as opposed to a segmented.
This is the way it's been since 1957, correct? And it's not part of the historic portion of the building.
My second question is, if you're going to have the old entrance removed, or actually make the old entrance new again, the planting in the parking area doesn't reflect any emphasis on the new one at all. It in fact reflects emphasis on the one you want to sort of de-emphasize. Right. Because there's a fountain in the middle of the parking lot. There's a walkway goes up to the upper lot, as I recall. And should something maybe be done about emphasizing the new entrance, or the new, you know what I'm trying to say, the old, new historic entrance? It seems to me that would be something you'd be done with planting or stonework or something.
Good suggestion.
Those are my two questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Okay. You have this lawn out here and this rebel wall. So you'd be explain that how that would it would be using old sandstone?
Well, there's a large wall that's being decommissioned around the tennis courts. All that
Okay.
stonework is going to be
Yeah.
utilized in a more loose rubble way as opposed to an angular form or a more fitted form. And then there'll be a planter above that, Robert, and then below that to kind of cascade and to soften the base of that.
So you'll have plant materials sort of reaching up the wall and plant materials cascading down the wall, soften whatever happens. Or how about planting pockets integrated, or do you know? Not even know yet.
I think we're retaining about 4 or 5 feet. So
Okay.
we're going to be
Not too
not
bad.
really that loose. I think it'll have a battered alignment, and it'll have a looseness to its joint pattern, but it's not going to have pockets in the wall itself.
Okay.
Further questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
what type of material are you using on the pool deck again? Maybe I missed it.
No, we have discussions now of
dig
kind
for a
of
picture?
stone paver, stone tile. This is just a sample picture, Commissioner Suding, of what we're looking at, and I don't think we've got our full palette discovered yet, but I think we do want to use an old world textured stone paver around
And
the
would
pool
that
areas.
would that pool terrace be a different material than, say, the circulation paths, such as this path here, or whatever happens to this front entry?
A hierarchy of
Yeah.
paving. I think that's a very good comment.
Well, it wasn't quite a comment; it was a question, but it was leading to a comment.
Well, I think the patios and the outdoor courtyard areas would be of a consistent material, and the walkways would be of something different.
Okay.
It's not been determined exactly how that hierarchy is material-wise been chosen.
Any further questions? Seeing none, let's have comments, please.
Sure.
Yes.
I really appreciate the extra work that's gone into this project. I know that the site visit that we had up there in the fall, I think it was really instructive because it's a complex process. I would like to go back and just be sort of walk through the new configuration of the two pro shops together. That's not a imposition. I'd like to go up there and see where this is. I mean, I know where they're going to go, but I'd like to see where the new configuration ends. I think it's a step back a little bit, which I think is excellent. And I think those stepped out tennis courts at an angle is sort of peels them away from the view sites. I think I'd like to see for myself. I don't know if any of the other commissioners feel that way, but I think it's complex enough in the combination of those two shops to warrant a site visit.
Mr. Dury, I think it is out of our purview.
Yeah.
It is not within the envelope of our purview.
No, not the tennis courts.
No.
Even the pro shop.
Even the pro
Really?
shop, yes.
Well, what a
Even
shame.
that.
Yeah, it is a shame. Well, oh heck.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, technically
Mr. Schallenberger?
Kind of in and out on this west end.
We are sort of encroaching, they're saying. So you could see that part that's just within our...
Were any of the previous comments not addressed?
I think in overall, they have been addressed.
I think we took those to heart and addressed each one, I think.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Suding.
I think it is unfortunate that we're not reviewing the pro shops just because of their relationship to the building, the historic building. That being said, I don't think that the pro shops relate very well to the historic building. End of discussion on that. I think it's a huge mistake to go back to the historic entrance. I can appreciate history and the historic use of something. However, the building has now, and the parking lot has now been set up for a very strong entryway here, very strong entry point here.
Let me just ask the applicant, that envelope, does it in fact cut through that building?
Well, it's not an exact science, but if we look at what was the
if I would manage to turn it the right way. The previous outline, it was at the edge of the first tennis court, and based on this is the edge of the first tennis court, so it appears that it's either half in or half out. Or
Well, I'd like to comment on that, if I would, Madam Chair, is that you did, in fact, review these buildings as part of
Yes, we did.
HLAC last time, and the ABR is not reviewing them, so one of you has to, and I think since you reviewed it last time, you should review it again.
Yes, Building 17, which is the new golf pro shop and practice green, is included within this envelope. My apologies, Mr. Drury. I think it is back on the table.
yeah, I mean, one could infer that line stays, or one could infer that it's still at the first tennis court. So that's sort of up to
If ABR isn't reviewing it, and we aren't reviewing it, we're in trouble. So, I think we should be reviewing it, particularly because of its relationship to the historic building.
I'm going to ask for a straw vote. How many commissioners feel that we need to go back on site to see how this building relates to the existing building? Please hold your hands up.
Only if it's pouring rain. I do. I feel like that.
There is a majority.
I'll go.
There is a majority that requests a site visit for that particular relationship.
Yeah, there's also, I think it would be helpful to look at this entry discussion. I think there's some interesting subject matter there, so we can understand that. I'm going to make a couple comments. First of all, I think the whole pool circulation has improved. I think the plant palette, as I've heard, has improved. I think that where that central tree is, where the golf carts are, that has to be a really special specimen, wonderful, something incredibly sort of special and unique there. That being said, I'm really when you turn, let's see, the elevation where you turn the stone wall into a stucco wall. What is that elevation? West elevation.
Courtyard.
I think we're losing something by losing the stone at that location.
Yeah. It's actually the west elevation, if I can find it.
West elevation. I think we've lost some quality. I think the
3.2.
I think the attention to quality of materials is going to be key here, especially around that pool. When I heard stone paving around the pool, something that rich could really work nicely. However, my main comment is I think the circulation around that pool is greatly improved, and I appreciate those efforts. And I would like to go up and understand what is happening with this tension between the sort of re-embraced historic entry and the planting, that whole relationship. So I need some clarification. It's fairly complex.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can you just comment on the entry discussion? It's common for country clubs to have a formal entrance and an informal entrance, and it seems that a historic entrance acting as the informal entry is entirely appropriate even though it's the historic entry, it can still be secondary to the main grand entry and almost as an homage piece. So I don't know that I have some objection at all to the current layout.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, may I comment real quickly? I'm Bill Medell, representing Tire Warner Hotels. And it's important because we're talking about this historic entrance evolved because of a circulation that's changing inside the clubhouse through another process that we're reviewing right now with the owner and the operator of the clubhouse. The entrance, the historic entrance, was designed to open up to create another entryway for events, non-members, and the existing entrance will be still utilized, but it's getting back to what you're just saying, for the membership, make it more of a private entrance for the membership only. Today, when we have weddings or events inside the clubhouse, members are actually walking right into the middle of a wedding or some kind of event that's going on. So this whole historic entry came back to us that actually enhanced the circulation inside the clubhouse. And that's why we thought it would be an addition and a positive to recreate that historic entryway.
Thank you.
I don't think there's a problem.
But you're saying keep this as the primary entrance.
That's the granite.
And
yes.
this is the secondary entrance.
That's correct.
So if people are walking in here, they're not walking into a wedding?
That's correct. It's private members that are walking in.
And if they walk through here, they are walking into a wedding?
That is the public entry.
Yeah.
It's the opposite way.
It's the other way. It's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
This would be more of a private entrance for a function, and then this would be the members' entrance.
Oh.
If I may.
That's where I'm confused.
And a little history, I'll make it in less than a minute. Originally, when this building was built, this was the kitchen, this was the dining room, this was the living room, all those rooms. And what happens now is when it was remodeled, it was completely flipped. There was a wall that went all the way across the site here. There was a round motor court here. You came in, the parking was here. So this was the service end of the building. When it got remodeled, basically all that flipped. We've got service here. Now it's kitchen, banquet, and then this central hall, which is the best room in the entire building.
Right.
And then it was opened up, and that was the main entrance. Everybody walks in, and they're like magnets. They go right to this window, and so and that will remain the main entrance for the membership of the clubhouse. But when there is an event going on, we thought it would be best to have a secondary entrance, and also we thought it was pretty cool to be able to kind of recreate or find a new use for that historic entry point. So it was acknowledged. Right now, it's sort of a sad little alcove full of gum wrappers, and it's just and a couple of gates, and it kind of ignores what it used to be in 1917.
Okay, so in the event of an event, this is sort of closed, and this is the entrance.
Exactly. So for banquets, this is sort of, you could call this the banquet entrance, you could call this the member entrance, and this main space will no longer be used for events. And so it's a grand reception hall for everyone. It's just something that can plug onto the banquet area and could be used as a grand reception hall. So we're utilizing the same building, but the circulation is completely different than it was originally designed for.
We are still running late, so
Okay, so the
comments,
comment
please, will be succinct.
I want to follow up on that is I think the landscape and the lead up into that banquet entrance needs to be enhanced somehow, even in a secondary way, because right now you just pass by. So that's my comment. Yep.
Any further comments? They acknowledge that they are here for preliminary, but that they're short of preliminary. So we will just give you comments. I think in general that you have done a very good job of responding to our comments and obviously to the Planning Commission comments. And we appreciate the amount of detail and presentation that you've given us, even to the point of showing us things we're not allowed to look at. We would like to request a site visit to explore the relationship of your reconfigured pro and golf shop so that we can understand better your intention and the relationship you wish to have. We're concerned that the new relationship of entries be properly landscaped and circulation designed to define, be properly defined through landscape and circulation. And I think I'll leave it at that. Yes?
I just want to add, I think the pool area has just really improved quite quickly. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll work with staff to set up a date. Okay. All right. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. I think yes, indefinite. Indefinite continuance?
Indefinite continuance for preliminary? Yeah, we'll tell you when we're ready to come back, so we've got proper drawings.
Yes. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries. The next item is the Historic Structures Report for 125 State Street. Oh, yes.
One by one.
We'd like to take a 5-minute break, please, while everybody's being set up.
Do we have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Chemical break?
Yeah. Some of us might want that. Okay. Oh, we're going to get inundated here. Inundated.
Admire the moon as a moon, just a moon. Nobody's heart belongs to me today. I may be sad at times and disinclined to play, but it's not bad at times to go your own sweet way. Nobody's arms belong to me. No arms feel strong to me. I admire the moon as a moon, just a moon. Nobody's heart belongs to me today.
I thought I found a girl of my dreams. Now it seems this is how the story ends. She's gonna turn me down and say, can't we be friends? I thought for once it couldn't go wrong. Not for long, I can see the way this ends. She's gonna turn me down and say, can't we be friends? Never again, through with love and through with them. They play their game without shame, and who's to blame? I thought I'd found a girl I could trust. What a bust. This is how the story ends. She's gonna turn me down and say, can't we be friends?
Good evening.
As we have a quorum and we are running late, I would like to start a little earlier if I could. Will you introduce yourselves for the record for the historic report?
Yes. Pamela Post, Post Hazeltine Associates.
Tim Hazeltine, Post Hazeltine Associates.
Would you like to sort of give a little overview of why we're
Sure.
this?
The focus of this study is, the proposed project is to build a children's museum at the southeast corner of sort of the depot area facing State Street. And on that parcel is a small rectangular building that was constructed in 1910. It's the Signalman's Building. And it's one of a series of structures built by the Southern Pacific Railroad Company between circa 1904 to about 1910. And then there were some additional structures, including the former roundhouse that was on Cabrillo Boulevard. There was a whole complex of railroad-related features. There was a rail yard, and these were all sort of part of that in some sense. And our report focuses on analyzing the potential impacts that could occur from the construction of the proposed Children's Museum. The proposed project does not include any direct impacts to the Signalman's Building, and that means that there's no proposal to physically alter the building or attach anything to it. The conclusion of the report is that the building has been designed in a way that meets the Secretary of the Interior standards. And that's not so much in terms of architectural detail, but just the overall placement of the building on the lot. Through a fairly lengthy process of working with the applicant and their architect, we through that evolving process, the building originally, I think as you saw it several months ago, was about 6 feet behind the Signalman's Building, and it's now been moved to 16 feet behind it. And the overall massing of the building has been changed in the footprint in order to provide some apron around the Signalman's Building so that it doesn't seem like there's a new structure as close as it was. And the report essentially concludes that that portion of the setting of the depot complex doesn't rise to the level of significance of the area immediately around the depot itself, the landscape grounds that we're familiar with, the Morton Bay fig tree, the lawn areas, the historic trees. Historically, that parcel was essentially the way it looks now during the period the railroad used the property. There may have been a water tank on it at one time. It's somewhat unclear. But the structure we see is the structure that was there. The area behind it was apparently used as an informal storage yard. There were we have a photograph that's in the report. I think it's figure 5. And that's the only old photograph we could find of the Signalman's Building. And yes, it's a very poor quality one. But in the foreground of that photograph, you can see some long sort of rectangular pieces of wood. Those may be railroad ties, or they could even be metal rails. We're not quite sure because the photo's not very good quality. So it appears the Southern Pacific used it as a sort of storage yard. So they would store excess equipment and materials used in maintaining the railway. And so as I noted a few moments ago, our conclusion is that building this building will not affect the depot complex in a way that would so diminish its setting that it could not convey its historic characteristics and appearance. And so that was the basis of our final conclusion that the report, or that the project would meet the standards. They are going to, it's built into the project description that the facility, the area will be photo documented before any alterations. And in addition to that, they are proposing to put in a fairly extensive interpretive display, perhaps both inside and outside the building, that will convey the history of the Signalman's Building, which right now is fairly poorly interpreted, and give people an idea of what that building was and what it was used for, as well as have some visual documentation there that shows what the parcel looked like before the museum was built, which was, of course, an empty yard or lot.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this report? Thank you. Will you introduce yourself for the record, please?
Kellum DeForest. A couple of points I would like to make. One is that this part, I am one of the people that think that this is a poor location, an inappropriate location for a children's museum, being right next to the railroad tracks and with somewhat limited parking, and I would have loved to. And I also want to point out that this the site has not been approved as yet by the Planning Commission, and so I think I'd like to see that, and I don't know whether it's part of a historical structures report to indicate that everybody isn't in favor of this site. Also, I would like to, I do think it diminishes or impacts the view, the railroad history, by having a large building right next to the tracks at that location. And also it would be helpful to consider that hopefully that rail travel will expand, and I've noticed it is expanding, that this area could be used for commuter rail facilities rather than a children's museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forrest. I'm going to ask for questions from the Commission. There are no questions? Oh, Suding.
Page 1, in the first paragraph, I don't know, about 75% down, says, however, that the signalman's building appears not to be eligible on an individual level for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. That's right?
Yes.
Okay. On page 6, under section 8.0, because the last sentence, because the signalman's building is listed in a local register that has been determined to be eligible for listing in the National Register of Historical Places, is considered a significant resource.
Yeah,
So, in the first part, you said it's not eligible on an individual level. I can understand that. But maybe I'm just confused and not reading it correctly.
Well, I think to clarify that, it should have stated, to clarify that because the signalman's building, it's listed in a local register, it's on the potential list, so for CEQA purposes, it's considered a significant resource for the purposes of CEQA review. And we should have said determined eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places as a
contributing element.
And we can add
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then that makes sense.
That clarifies it more. Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Then on page 2, under 4.0, environmental setting, I believe it's the third sentence. It starts with the 3 natural elements. Would it be possible to change natural to geographic elements?
Sure. Yes.
That's all.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Oh, I like the use of the word conflates.
Yeah.
Conflates. Conflates.
You use that for the pro shop and the tin shop
That's
as
under
well.
the Railway Express Agency, the REA building on behind.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Conflates.
Any further questions or comments on this report?
No, I wouldn't want to conflate it.
have a question comment. Would it be fair to say that the most important part of the report will be on page 18 when you make a summary and you clearly, I mean, you indicate that this project does not impact the small building, but the whole historical context in itself. Basically, you're not just the signaling building, but the whole complex. That's what you're saying right there on page 18, right?
Oh, you mean the depot?
Depots,
The
yeah.
whole depot,
Right.
the whole. Okay, so that basically is the meat of the matter.
Yeah.
It's right here on this page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion
So moved.
Second.
with your comments, Mr. Suding,
I'm sorry?
to include your
Yes,
comments.
please.
All those in
Except the
favor?
report.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can go
Thank
home.
you.
Okay.